Good evening. This meeting is called to order. This is the Litchfield Elementary School Governing Board. Today is Tuesday, September 8th. Welcome everyone here in the audience and joining us on YouTube or live at home somewhere. We're glad you're joining us. First, we're going to start tonight with our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I made this announcement before we were live to all of our guests on the internet, so I'll make it one more time. Because we're able to socially distance up here, we're going to remove our masks so that you're able to hear us through the microphone. Once we take a break and things like that, we'll gladly put our masks back on. If you'll give me just one moment, Shelley, I know you're prepared to present. I wanted to make a motion. We have an extended agenda tonight for you those that have actually looked through it all. And I wanted to just offer a sort of a shuffle, some of our action items at the end to make sure that we get through our school reopening and COVID and all of those items together. Those are our most important and most timely matters. So I'm going to make a motion that we remove items C, D, E, and H just down to the bottom of the agenda. So those will then come back after we get through all the policies and the bus riders and all of that kind of stuff, and then we'll go back to those. How was that? Any comments, discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. I will always say the section and the item number that we're on in the agenda so people can keep up because we're changing a little bit. I apologize. Okay, so we're going to begin to A, recognitions and celebrations with Ms. Shelton. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, President Clymer, members of the board, Superintendent Report. I know we have a full agenda, but we always start with celebrations because that's such an important part of our school district. Thank you for making the time this morning or this evening. We have 3 really exciting things to share, starting with a grant that Scott with the elementary school PTA won from the Arizona State PTA. Please join me in congratulating our road runners. They were among stiff competition and received support from the state PTA to create health and wellness bags for all of their students. Only 14% of the PTAs in the state won that grant. We're very, very proud of them. Also, special thanks to Governing Board Member Kimberly Moran. We appreciate their connection with us to the Church of Litchfield Park. They reached out to us and brought over some extra support for their families with the Owls and the Wildcats at Western Sky Middle School. They rolled in with a generous gift card for both schools to help promote teacher and staff appreciation because we know that we have a 92% teacher retention rate, and that's because our teachers feel so loved within our school district. We appreciate the Church of Litchfield Park helping to promote that, and Mrs. Moran, thank you for your support in that partnership. And finally, please just pause and celebrate Ignite Yoga, one of our longtime partners who has come through once again to provide free mindfulness training and yoga classes for our Falcons at Corte Sierra Elementary School. We're very grateful to all of our community partners and community members who show support for our A+ schools. Thank you so much for pausing to celebrate with us.
Thank you, Shelley. This is actually the best part of the meeting, right? Where we get to actually talk about all the wonderful things that are happening. Thank you again for always coordinating such amazing community partnerships. I think this year we have absolutely learned the definition of teamwork and collaboration, and without our community partners, a lot of our schools probably wouldn't have been able to do some of the things that we always do, just based on being a part and things like that. So thank you to everyone who were able to make that happen. Any other questions or comments for Ms. Martha? Okay. Moving on to 2B, the tax credit presentation. We will have Wendy Taylor, and this is information only. So.
Good evening, President Clymer, board members, Superintendent Gunning, administrative staff, and community members. My name is Wendy Taylor, and I am the Director of Finance. Part of my job is to oversee the tax credit program, donations, and expenditures. brief general presentation about our tax credit program, as well as our 2019 revenue and expenditure data. So our the first slide is just an informational, general information about the limits. So individual limits are $200, and the married filing jointly tax credit donation amount is $400 maximum. So what expenditures qualify? So we have three main categories of tax credit expenditures: extracurricular, character education, and certain capital expenditures. And this is temporary only until June 30th of 2022. And this is just a general definition of what extracurricular activities are and the types that we use them. We use for electives, clubs, that kind of thing, educational field trips. So every school, before they use tax credit funds, before they enter a requisition, they have to answer these questions, and they all have to answer yes to the question, or they're not allowed to use the tax credit funds. So everything has to be yes. If there's a no, then they have to use another source of funding. Our character ed programs must include the following for all of these. It has to have at least 6 of the character traits listed, and then as well as presentations by teachers or mentors, etc. So our capital expenditures, this is a temporary expense that the legislators allowed until June 30th of 2022 in order for some school districts to use up their excess tax credit funds. So we are also able to use the funds for furniture and equipment, textbooks, instructional aids, and library books. This is how our schools use tax credit funds. So they're mainly used for educational field trips such as JA BizTown, Math and Science Camp, Wildlife World Zoo, for school electives and clubs such as yoga, dance, science, Odyssey of Minds, fine arts, character ed, and middle schools use the tax credit funds for athletic expenditures, mainly for sports officials. So this slide is our general 2019 reported revenue and expenditures that's reported by law to Arizona Department of Revenue every year. As you can tell, the total expenditures are $170,000, which is higher than the $160,000 revenue that we received in the same year. This is possible because all the schools are allowed to carry over their funds every year, and there is no limit. So they can carry over as much as they have left at the end of the year. The other thing is that we'd like to mention is that Title I schools, so sometimes we get donations that are not designated for a specific school. And so if that's undesignated, what we do is every year pick one of the Title I schools on a rotating basis, and they receive the funds that year. And then, I wanted to point out one other thing. I don't know, it's kind of hard to see on the slide, but at the bottom is I have the total percentages of expenditures by category, and as you can tell, they're all pretty much the same. They're all about 20%, 15 to 20. So how to donate? We have a link on our homepage on our district website. It's prominent. So as soon as you pull up, it's pretty easy to spot it. Donors can also mail checks in. Employees may also contribute through payroll deductions. Any questions?
If I could say one thing, not having to do with your tax credit presentation, unfortunately, since we have a new camera and we're not doing it at an individual computer level here, I need to remind myself and everyone, just speak louder because we're having a harder time hearing us online since they're not working directly through that. So just make sure you talk in your microphone and use your teacher voice. Okay, I apologize. Any questions or comments on the tax credit presentation?
I do, Wendy. So as you know, or maybe as you don't know, one of the ways that I originally got involved in the district was through tax credit and trying to beef up our tax credit program. So that was years ago. That was when my oldest, who's now in college, was like in kindergarten. So many, many years ago. So lots of things have changed on this. I love that the state's now allowing us to use it for capital expenditures. And you might not know the answer to this, but my question is, are there reasons beyond just the socioeconomic situation at the school that would lead to the disparity in the numbers, such as Litchfield and Palm Valley kind of being, and Western Sky, being some of the top revenue generators?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not really knowledgeable about that. I don't know. I mean, I know that we all put out, all the schools have their own method or way of putting out the information, be it newsletters and that kind of thing. I actually was talking to Mrs. Hornback earlier today, and we were discussing some other opportunities, maybe some more social media kind of presentations or information that we can get out there to try to promote it. And then we also can be sure to email all of our past donators to try to beef up. But as far as the disparity, I don't really know the answer to that.
Okay, which is fine. Do you have any insight on that, Jody?
Yes, so typically with our Title I schools, anything related to fundraising in some way, shape, or form, whether that be through tax credit, raising dollars there, or any typical fundraising, you will definitely see a disparity. A lot of times, some of the Title I schools have limited PTAs or PTOs, with folks giving and dedicating lots and lots of time, but just not at the same number and the same volume. And so it's always been something that we've definitely worked on, and that's something like even us at the district level, and why we started doing, like, if we had a random community member that came in to donate, that we always target one of our Title I campuses.
And do we currently put that on our website, on the donation page? Do we put some sort of verbiage that might say that? Like, if you don't have a local school or you don't have a child in our schools, we would suggest you contribute. Are we allowed to say that? Contribute to our Title I schools, or is that something we might?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if there's a limitation on if you can. These are the schools that
We can talk about that.
Yeah.
But okay, thank you. I appreciate this presentation.
Thank you, Wendy.
Anyone else have any questions? Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to 3A. Governing board consider reinstating policy BEDH, which is public participation at the board meetings. So our board meetings have been closed up until now based on COVID-19 and safety protocols and precautions the district has taken. We are now able to reinstate that as long as we keep a minimum number of people in the building. So it is for our consideration to reinstate our policy now and allow public comment. Questions, comments, Melissa? Yes.
No, can I just make a motion? Or we discuss it?
Yes.
I motion to reinstate policy BEDH, public participation at board meetings.
All right, second. Okay. Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, so we will go on to 3B, acknowledgement of public request to speak. If you will bear with me, I have to legally read this before anyone is allowed to speak, but I will say, Mrs. Fleming, you are up first, and you can make your way to the podium while I read this. Pursuant to ARS 38-431.01, this agenda item provides an open call to the public, allowing individuals to address the governing board on any issue within the jurisdiction of the board.
Items not listed on the agenda may be brought to the governing board's attention under this section of the agenda. Due to the open meeting law, the governing board cannot discuss or take action on items not listed on the agenda. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Governing board members are not permitted to discuss or take legal action on matters raised during open call to the public unless the matters are properly noticed for discussion and legal action. The law permits board members to ask staff to review a matter or ask that matter be put on a future agenda. Individuals wishing to address the governing board should fill out a request form available at the sign-in table and turn it into the board secretary. Mrs. Fleming, thank you so much.
Thank you. Good evening, board members and Superintendent Report. My name is Angel Fleming, and I'm a second grade teacher at Palm Valley Elementary School. I have 3 children that attend our district schools. So as a parent, I'm confident in the reopening plans that our district, our school administration, and teachers have in place for my children to return to campus safely. I passionately believe and know everyone's number one priority is the safety of my children, their classmates, and staff members. The reality is that COVID will not be going away. At this point, the Arizona Department of Health Services recommends opening schools in a hybrid model. When my children return, they're expected to learn new routines and procedures that will help keep them safe. They will be learning a new way of school and building a new sense of security in their environment. In my opinion, it makes the most sense to have our children practice this in the smaller class sizes that come with the hybrid model until we meet the 5-day learning model metrics. I have watched my own personal children struggle through their virtual classes, holding back tears because the technology is new and the lack of skills get in the way. They finish their day with headaches and eye pain as a result of looking at the computer all day. It's heartbreaking as a parent to not be able to help them. I understand that not everyone will agree, but by voting yes to the phased hybrid model, you'll be allowing families who want their children in school to have that option. Families who are so apprehensive have the choice for the digital academy for their children. I urge you to allow my children and others like them to return to their classrooms where they learn best on September 16th. As a teacher, the current model of virtual learning isn't sustainable for students, families, or teachers. I see this model causing an incredible amount of stress on all parties involved. The lack of technology and skills, internet connection issues, and lack of support because families are working out of the home is only going to get worse as the school year continues. The state is opening businesses, which in turn will cause families to struggle to find a place for their kids to go safely. Our teachers are truly amazing and have stepped up and shown that they're adaptable and dedicated and will put in the extra effort to ensure their students succeed during virtual learning. However, it's time to open our classroom doors and begin to teach them where they should be, in our classrooms and not in front of a screen. Yes, some students may be thriving in this environment, but there's so many more who are not. I know that some teachers who have spoken louder and have expressed an opposing opinion, but just like families that are apprehensive, teachers also have the choice of the digital academy. Please know that there's an incredibly large group of teachers that are ready and willing to return to the classroom to teach their students. We believe in our administration and district's plan to safely reopen our schools so we can do what we do best, which is pour our heart and souls into our classrooms. We've received the Safe Schools and professional development trainings to prepare us for the new ways to keep our children safe. We have the cleaning supplies and PPEs. We're prepared and ready to open our doors. Let us follow the recommended guidelines. I urge you to vote in favor of opening our schools on September 16th in the phased hybrid model. Thank you for the opportunity to have a voice tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Okay, next up is Ms. Reyes. And while she's coming up, I will make this even more efficient. Alex Essen, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that last name. You will be next up.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Gunning, good evening. My name is Ken Reyes. I am a teacher at Litchfield Elementary and the president of the Litchfield District Education Association. The LDA asks that you vote to keep our schools in remote learning until there are 3 main metrics, which is the safest option for our staff and for all of our students. According to the CDC's decision tree, we still need time to plan, prepare, and practice, especially in the areas of providing health and safety and communication. The plans are on paper, but they also need to be transferred into real life. We are short-staffed in many areas and have run into many shortfalls without students fully on campus. We provide a survey called the Self-Check-In, and this survey asked staff if they had basic supplies, cleaning logs for high-touch areas, if rooms were being cleaned, and share examples of safe and unsafe behaviors. We submitted the last survey to you guys on August 11th, and some of those staff concerns consisted of not having soap, not having cleaning supplies, and children staff not wearing masks. President Janelle Clymer was so thankful to email us back guaranteeing that safety is our top priority. However, on Friday, we still had multiple classrooms and multiple sites who did not have soap. Areas that had not been cleaned, and staff were still concerned about their class sizes and disinfecting once students are on campus. So we need to have a sustainable system in place that brings the reopening plans from paper into the real life of reality. And that includes having soap all year long in bathrooms and in the classroom, refilled constantly. The LDA also circulated a large petition asking the LASD to stay in remote learning until at least fall break, creating stability. Nearly 1,000 people from the community and staff members even signed this petition, and they wanted to show the comments which we provided to you. If we want social and emotional well-being, we need to focus on creating stability and self-care, no matter where school is taking place, whether it's home or on campus. Opening too early makes us a yo-yo of instability. Date, no date, in school, out of school, quarantine, no quarantine. We don't know what's going on, and that puts us in the survival mode. In order for us to stay in the safety mode, we need to put safety first and commit to that. So we're asking you to make sure that we put safety first. Lastly, the roadmap section has a communication about stakeholders. And we were told as stakeholders that we'd be notified once a week and communicated. However, the communication has not been clear from site to site and even from position to position. So we're asking for continuity across the district. And finally, yellow metrics says at the bottom, potential for rapid increase in cases. And we want you to put safety first and return when all three metrics are great. Give us time to plan, time to prepare and practice so we can open safely in reality, not just on paper. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thanks for the time to speak tonight. My name is Alex Essen. I'm a parent of a kindergartner at Palm Valley Elementary. He's in the special education program there, so he's actually been fortunate enough to return to school, which has been a huge blessing. And I kind of just wanted to start off by saying thank you for making that happen. It's a huge win for special education parents. The at-home stuff was just not going great. So that has been a huge turning point for our life personally and also for his development. I also want to say thank you for some of the great staff that has been willing to bring the special education kids back in. I think it's been a very successful couple of weeks for them so far, and that they would also say that that was the way to go, specifically for kids who have trouble paying attention a little more than average. In my opinion, I think it's worth noting that virtual therapy has been the going out the door game plan. So while the kids are back in the classroom, services such as occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech, and other related services have been done virtually. I do think that that places a much higher burden than you may have expected on those aides and teachers in the classroom. And I also think that it is not working, much like special education was not working virtually in the home. Currently, those kids are doing their best, along with those aides, to listen to a therapist. Sometimes that therapist is asking the aide that has been partnered with that student to point to what the student is actually doing. Many times the student is running off. These are all just kind of anecdotes that I've heard over time. And overall, I think that all involved would probably say that it is not an effective form of therapy. While I understand as leadership, you have an extremely difficult decision to make. And as a federal employee as well, leadership trying to make decisions for the needs of your people and trying not to legislate for the lowest common denominator for what may be the most conservative safety first way versus accomplishing the mission of getting these kids educated is very difficult, and people's voice speak loud, so I totally get that. However, what I'd encourage you to do is approach it the same way that I approach most decisions with my son, which is how guilty will I feel about this in 20 years when he's fully developed. Am I doing enough right now? Have I made the right decisions, or could I be doing more? And will I regret that decision in 18 years? In my opinion, what we are doing as a society and or a school district here has long-reaching ramifications that are as bad or could be as bad as COVID, maybe in the short term. These kids are at lower risk because of their age. Most teachers are healthy, and there are some, as mentioned before, that have high-risk individuals at home or are themselves high risk and have the option for some kind of a hybrid environment. I would ask and implore you to bring the kids back to school, specifically with my son in therapy, but not just limiting it to my son. That I think is the right answer across the board. In honoring the IEP and the IDEA legislation, I also would ask you that if the decision is not made soon, then parents like myself will have to go to the due process model and say, are we even honoring the true spirit and intent of the IDEA Act and individualized education programs when it comes to therapy? Again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your teachers. The last few weeks have been a blessing.
Thank you very much. Before we go to our last speaker, I just want to let you know that right up next, we're actually having a special education presentation. So if you do want to stick around for a few more minutes, there may be some of those questions that are answered. Just FYI in case. It doesn't, I don't know that it mentions that specifically on the agenda, but that might be of interest to you. Okay, thank you very much for your comments. We appreciate it. The last person is Camaro. Ryan? I might be saying that incorrectly, and I really apologize. Oh, there's not an N. I apologize. Cameron, yes. I'm so sorry.
It's all right. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Ryan Cameron, and I'm a recent graduate of Alpharetta High School. I would like to comment on my personal experience with online learning. I myself was on the second semester of my senior year when COVID struck and the schools shut down. I experienced the first wave of online learning as well. It was a disaster. At the time, I was a nearly straight-A student taking 4 AP classes at once. But when online school began, I saw my first leap. I was lucky because Alpharetta does not let grades drop below first semester reports. But had I not had such relaxed restrictions to keep me afloat, I surely would have drowned. Unfortunately, though my grades did not suffer, my education did. I felt that I learned nothing those last few months of the school year, and to no fault of my incredible teachers. It was a sudden and random onset of online schooling that had dragged me down. It simply isn't as effective as in-person education. Not to mention, school is more about educating on the gists of math and science and English. It is about creativity, making connections, forming friendships, and for some people, this social learning is what will take them far. Future entertainers, entrepreneurs, and innovators thrive on this kind of learning. I believe they are being left in the dust. My brother, for instance, is an imaginative 9-year-old boy. He creates. He puts together little action sequences with his dinosaurs and soldiers, and if you dare ask about them, he will talk your ear off. He once forced me into making a movie with him. It took all day and half the night, but we did it. He has all this creative potential and nowhere to make use of it. His brain is unique and it cannot be nurtured through online schooling. When my parents are at work, I am the one sitting by his side, reteaching him his lessons. He struggles with a learning disorder. He learns differently from the other kids, but online schooling does not tend to the minority. Online schooling has done its best to replicate the education kids get in the classroom, but it has failed. When I was in 4th grade, I specifically remember making poem books. We got to express our creativity through writing and drawing. In 5th grade, I wrote a scientific thesis and built a volcano. In elementary school, I worked on many a class project and fooled around with my group of peers. Those ands that make school great have been eradicated. For those who excel online, they have the option to continue learning that way. But for those of us who don't, we deserve a choice. My brother deserves a choice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know it's not easy to get up here in front of us, in front of everyone else, so thank you very much. And also, I'm sure your brother will thank you. In 18 years, I'm sure your parents will thank you. Thank you for doing that. That is probably the best sentiment I've heard in a while. And and a comment that probably every parent says to themselves every single day. So anyway, thank you everyone for your comments. We really appreciate them. Moving forward to 4A, reports from our administrators. And we have Melissa McComb, our special education director, who will be giving her hosting abilities a try this evening and giving us a presentation.
Good evening. Good evening, Madam President, members of the Governing Board, and Superintendent Gunning. I'd like to present a brief overview of the services that we've implemented in response to the executive order to require in-person special education services for students with the highest level of needs. We determined our highest level of need students are those that receive services in our self-contained classrooms, and determined the safest and most effective way to offer these services was in each individual self-contained classroom. We were able to start on August 17th with 175 students in attendance across the district in developmental preschool through 8th grade. We have invited additional students from our self-contained classes off the wait list to attend these services by evaluating staffing and resources available each week on Wednesday for the following Monday, and we currently have 266 students attending across the district as of today. Overall, the implementation of these services has gone extremely well, and our students are flourishing. Our special education teachers and paraprofessionals have worked diligently to implement health and safety measures and to work with students on critical skills of hand washing, distancing, and wearing of wearing of face coverings. We are extremely thankful to all those who have stepped up during this time to meet the needs of our students with these in-person services, including teachers, paraprofessionals, psychologists, nurses, coaches, cafeteria staff, custodial and grounds crews, student transporters and bus monitors, and administrators. You have our reports. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Okay, thank you. I apologize, I'm just gonna go first. I'm just a comment on your presentation, not just everything. Thank you very much. I know it's been a lot of hard work trying to bring some kids back and not others, and transition that. So I think from the reports, the plan seems like it's going really well in terms of bringing kids back, letting them acclimate, bringing additional kids back, and letting the staff acclimate. There's a lot of protocols in special education on top of the safety protocols that you have to worry about. So thank you for doing that. Because we just had a person speak directly about the virtual therapies and things like that on the agenda, do you have any insight into that, or could you answer any of those questions in terms of what we're currently doing or what might be in the future down the road as we return back to school?
Yeah, so it's accurate that we have kept the services virtual at this point, even though the students are in the classroom. And that's for a couple of reasons. One reason is that our therapists typically have 70 to 80 students on their campus across 2 to 3, on their caseload across 2 to 3 campuses. And so that would be, especially for our students with this level of need, that would be less than 6 feet, with a mask on, but it would be exposure for every single one of those students. And so to go across campuses and across classrooms, potentially even at one school, for instance, Palm Valley, there are 45 students in our self-contained programs there, around 35 in person right now. And so, and about 20 staff. So if that person that was delivering services were to be positive, then that would be quarantining that entire 70 people, and a high needs population. The other thing that we take into account with that is that a school-based model of services of therapy can never be enough. So our number one is always to be teaching our teachers, and I feel bad that you're behind me. It's always to be teaching our teachers and our paraprofessionals to do what they're doing in therapy all the time. Because we know that what they have for speech and what they have for occupational therapy and physical therapy, if we were to work on those 120 minutes a month or 90 minutes a month, these students would not make progress. And so the therapist is the expert, and they are in touch with that student to make sure that they are keeping up with the dynamic changes of how we need to work with the student. But the paraprofessionals and the teacher are implementing those skills all of the time. And if they didn't, our students would not make progress. And so we take into account that that's our model in the first place, is that we are making sure that they're teaching those skills all of the time in person. That's part of the reason to figure in that, yes, it's a loss during maybe that 30 minutes of that therapy time, because they're not always attending to that computer. But the gain of the health aspect and also the idea of sticking with our school-based model of really having therapy be wrapped around all the time. As we get, this was in-person services and it was early and it wasn't even yellow. When we started, we were in the red, right? So we wanted to be really cautious with that. As we're, getting into yellow, I would still think, maybe we could consider it on like a campus if a therapist was only on that campus. Again, still a high amount of student interaction. But as we move into full person, then we could probably start to do that and just look at, are we going to cross campuses, things like that. And we have to be careful because again, they have high caseloads and they go across several campuses. So that'd be
Probably just preliminary timeline, probably not during the hybrid model, but as we move to the 5-day in-person model, you consider that, obviously campus by campus, but so as we move to that green zone. Okay.
Yeah, and I think it would depend again on the service because, for instance, our physical therapist, she services our entire district, and some schools don't have any students that have physical therapy needs, but she probably goes to 12 to 13 of our schools with 55 on her caseload. And so again, for her to be traveling to all of those schools, it's a risk. I'm not sure we're ready to take. So I have to weigh it out on each program and campus and things like that.
Okay. Great, thank you very much. All right, well, I'll open the floor now for questions for the administrators.
I have just a couple of questions. I did want to comment that I really enjoyed seeing the connection with the students that we are making even in this virtual distance learning format. Examples of that are the curriculum pickups and the virtual spirit weeks, which I think is important to at least have some of that normalcy there. I know my son was super excited to get his Wonders book, and I added a little something to his day for sure. My questions are, I know that we did the upgrade of the connectivity and had some glitch, and then we got that fixed, but I was just wondering how that is now working, and is everyone seeing better connectivity and less dropping of Zooms and Google Meets and all that sort of thing? And I don't know if Jody would like to, or Superintendent like to address that, or if we for the administrator that night.
I'll begin and then I'll let Gina chime in because I don't see Brad here. He's probably working on our connectivity right now. So we definitely saw a little bit of an increase, but we still are struggling. And that's kind of one of the things that we'll be discussing later is just building that infrastructure that we need to support the volume that we have. We are very frugal and I think we're feeling it now probably more than ever. Things that we thought we could get by with and do okay with definitely has brought to the surface the dire need that we really have. So I think it's a little bit better. We've been very fortunate that a lot of our teachers have gone home to teach. And so that's been helpful. I definitely still think that there's still high volume times, as we know that everyone in the United States is utilizing internet more so than ever before. So I think there's kind of ups and downs, but it's definitely an area that still is a work in progress.
Do you have anything to add, Mrs. Grace?
Just remind me that the upgrade was up to upgrade those inside up to 1 gig. And so we were running about 300 gigs a day in the past. Now with online teaching, we're running more like 80 gig every day, all day sessions and all that. So it does still slow down. It does drop sometimes for people, depending on the site and how many people are on campus and on time. But it's better. And then as you see, future agenda items that we'd like to.
Okay, my only other follow-up to that is, could I get an update as to where we are now with technology distribution to students in need?
It hasn't changed since I gave you the last update.
Okay. Okay, we're still waiting on computers to come in that whole fund. Okay.
We still have some on hand, so when school says we got a student getting a hotspot, they get a hotspot, we can get a laptop, get a laptop. But we're kind of just this week we said we'll slow down for a second to see what we're going to do with the hybrid piece too, and see how many more computers we need back. Yes, we're waiting on delivery of everything still that we ordered. We haven't received any items.
Okay, thank you for that. My last question is in relation to extended day. Is Dr. Stair here? No, sorry, with the masks, it's hard to.
He's not doing
Okay.
it, I can help.
Okay, so my question is just because, these reports are issued, last week. And so I know there was some question as to what extended day was gonna look like. And so I'd just like an update, if you have an update on that, based on today.
So they are calling parents and looking at numbers now to see, and we have shut down a couple because of lack of interest, but we are ready to go. The only thing that's holding us up a little bit right now in making our plans is, well, from this point, whatever the board decides tonight, we'll be able to start rolling. But we're looking at using some staffing for our safe place that we're still obligated to provide during hybrid. So we're just trying to get our numbers together to see about divvying up community ed staff between extended day and our safe place opportunity. So, so that's what we're looking at right now, gathering numbers and determining how to roll that out, knowing that our first obligation is the executive order because we have to do that, but we are also prioritizing what parents need it to see where we can provide even small pockets of extended day, if we can find a few schools in local areas and geographically spread them out to utilize that. And then we would be looking at transportation, et cetera, as much as possible if we needed to do that.
Okay, and I know we have some staffing gaps in transportation. Do we have staffing gaps in extended day? I know we have a lot of turnover potential. It's kind of an area that we have some higher turnover needs.
Yes, we do. Extended day, we always have staffing gaps because kids are going to college and things like that and moving on to different careers. But we definitely have a staffing gap right now in extended day. And we were opting not to hire them for a while because we know we're not getting any revenue for community ed right now. So Ron's working on, Dr. Sherry's working on looking at hiring now slowly to make sure we don't jump off and then we have less parents in need of it. So, but we definitely have a staffing gap. Not as big as transportation right now, but still.
Okay, thank you. That is all.
So I just wanted to say that I liked our class numbers better this time since I seemed to have upset some people last month with my questions, but they did seem a little more balanced, like things are kind of balancing out, and that's good. Although I still have some concerns about the Digital Learning Academy and their very high numbers. I'm hoping that once we do get back in, maybe that will settle down a little because they do seem really high for several of our teachers. They seem to have a very large caseload, and I have concerns about the middle school. If every homeroom teacher has that high number, then that means they have even more students overall that are in grades and stuff for. But as for the reports, I didn't really have a lot of questions other than just a couple of things. I did want to say congratulations. I'm glad to recognize Scott WPTA. That's a school we came from, and I love them. I love that PTA very much. I was very excited to see that they took advantage. I encourage new principals with PTAs in your school to have them look at the different grant opportunities that are available, because state PTA and national PTA has grants all the time. They give away millions of dollars every year in grants, and so that's a great opportunity for the PTAs especially to have access to that. It's a great way to get extra funds for different projects you're trying to do on your campuses. So that was awesome news for Scott Libby to get that $5,000 and be able to put together their care packages for everybody. And also, my two things I wanted to say was Mr. Janke and his dinosaur suit at the school is awesome. I love that he dressed up for the kids. That makes them very excited, and I'm sure Sappy loves it too. And then also Forte's parade, the color parade. I like seeing how we're finding ways to engage our students, even though we can't have them on our campus in our classrooms. As a parent, being able to see that engagement myself with my kids and seeing all the creative ways that our schools are finding to do that is very important to me. And I know that everyone is working more than they ever were before, trying to make sure that we make this work. So I'm just really happy with all of our staff for making that happen for our kids and making them have as normal of an experience as possible in this very unnormal situation that we're in.
So I don't have questions either. Mostly it's just a shout out to all the teachers that I know have been working doubly hard for half the result. You know, I think most people are pretty frustrated with the online situation, regardless of how you feel about the situation. But I know that every single person is doing their absolute best, working really, really hard, and, you know, the outreach to try and make those connections from, you know, just keeping the kids engaged, you know, during lessons, and frankly, keeping their minds together with connectivity issues. I can tell you, I would not have and have not had in my home when, you know, our internet gets dropped because everyone on the planet's on it. And seeing the cool heads prevail, as a parent, I'm going to tell you, I'm not one of them. It makes me appreciate you guys even more. So regardless of where we move forward, I just want you guys to know I appreciate both as a board member and as a parent, every single one of you that have gone so far above and beyond trying to make this situation work.
Awesome. I would echo that sentiment. I am not always the cooler head in my home either. I will keep mine brief. I know we have a very long agenda, but I just wanted to call out Lakeland Creek's report. I don't know if Principal Tassin is here tonight. You already participated. There you are back there. I don't know if you had that report last month or I just missed it, but it was awesome. I totally loved it. So, I mean, the colors and the pictures and everything was just awesome. So thank you very much. It was really nice to see. I think everyone did a fantastic job of showing what life is really like on their campus right now. So behind the scenes where you have teachers with the multiple monitors and this is stacked up on books and this is stacked up on a cart, and, you know, I mean, just the hoops that people are jumping through right now to create what looks like a very well-planned environment when we all know that we are, you know, juggling multiple balls every day. So thanks for sharing with us what life is really like on the ground so we can see what the students in our safe place, their experience, and some of our special ed rooms and our development preschool. You know, all of these people are having such different experiences on every campus. So thanks for sharing that with us. We really appreciate it. Okay, moving on to 5A, report from Superintendent Report.
President Clymer, members of the governing board, one of the things I've just learned this evening is to not put on lipstick prior to putting on a mask, because I think it's probably all over my face right now. So, well, as we go into this time, I will say when I left on Friday, I was definitely feeling a light at the end of the tunnel. So I'm very excited that the folks in Arizona are masking up and taking everything seriously so that we can do what we need to do to get back into our schools. Also very, very proud of our teachers. Our teachers are working so hard and they're engaging their children, and it's evidence in their attendance. We have 97% attendance. That was awesome. We're always striving for 90 and above, and so to be hitting 97 in a time like this is unheard of. So thank you. And for their creativity and their flexibility, because this is definitely the year of flexibility. With that, celebrating our free on-site learning, where we have 170 students participating in that program. Very excited about that. And then as we were kind of going through this time, we have found that our enrollment went down. So we are down a little less than what we were about a week and a half ago, but we're down 873 students. And so what we've been able to do is to sit back and really think about what can we do now to help limit the impact in the future. And so with that, we did hold on hiring positions that were not needed until we knew exactly when we were going to reopen. So we held on 159 positions. We're still not sure exactly all the savings that we'll have, and I know Ms. Wendy will do all of her magic work with all of the numbers and getting all of that information. So we'll be able to see the impact of the grants that we're applying for, the impact of unfilled positions, the impact of substitute savings, and then of course the additional costs, and try to get all of that information to you all as soon as we can. We're hoping that this attendance rate will balance in the months of September, and we'll then definitely continue to monitor the growth of each of the campuses and reallocate hours and refill positions as attendance increases. We knew that the unknown is very difficult for our families, so we're hoping that with maybe some of the known coming, that they'll feel more confident and either come back or re-enroll. But definitely a shout out to the teachers, because we've had so many people who have left for online program and returned already. And that's just amazing that we started something in the latter part of June, something that typically takes a year to put together. Put it together, got it going, shared information with our staff and our teachers, and you guys have rocked it. And so, and done that in such a short period of time, so that I am forever grateful. We have been continuing to fill our priority positions, special ed, facilities, and transportation now, of course, technology, and the positions that continue on with our district office. We're also continuing on with our strategic planning and have already booked our survey dates, because we'll continue our survey process that we do with Studer this year as well. I believe that's all of the updates that I have for you tonight.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Superintendent Gunning? No? Okay. We will move on to item 5B, which is the reports from our governing board members. Was there a question? I'm sorry. No. Okay. All right, 5B, and we will kick it off with Mrs. Moran.
Thank you, President Clymer. To begin my board report this evening, I want to revisit our meeting from August 11th. As our board is consistently messaging, we're always open to feedback. So not surprisingly, we received feedback regarding the last meeting. In addition to that feedback that we received, I personally solicited feedback that I could utilize in addition to that. And the feedback was about the negative tone of our commentary and potentially questions from the meeting. I'm addressing this tonight because the stakeholder who expressed this feedback had concern that their view was widespread throughout the administration, the staff, and potentially the community. Since we're board members and board meetings are the only opportunity that we have to discuss such matters, I want to take a little bit of time tonight to provide my thoughts and some insights regarding myself personally. I cannot speak for the entire board, but I can certainly speak for myself. So one of the items that the stakeholder says is that we are a district that knows working together in the same direction and being positive about our work will get us much further than if we allow negativity to creep in. I want our community to know this and believe in this as well. I agree with that sentiment 100%, that we are unified in our direction. And for me, this is thanks in large part to our strategic plan. As a board, anytime that we are making decisions, we are guided by this strategic plan. And I hope that, or I know that Superintendent Gunning is guiding this district so that the administrators and the teachers are all going toward and referencing that strategic plan when they are making decisions as well. I also agree that a positive attitude gets everyone further than a negative attitude. I don't think anyone would dispute that. But I would like to offer 2 points for clarification. The first being in regards to my questions. So I take the responsibility of being a governing board member very seriously. I want to make sure that I give due consideration and thought to every vote, even things that are on the consent agenda that may seem like a rubber stamp. As such, I seek to understand, sometimes more than what might seem necessary, but there is a logic-based reason for my questions. I will strive to provide more insight into the why or the purpose of the information I'm requesting, whether that's during a meeting or before a meeting, to try to clarify that. But please don't confuse questioning to try to gain an increased understanding and accountability as questioning for a lack of trust in you or negative feedback to any specific individual. My second point of clarification is about my tone. I know that I speak in a tone. My husband and my 3 children know that I speak in a tone. I have tried for 25 years to change my tone without success. The exception to this is if I'm speaking to a baby. So I can speak to a baby in a different tone as most people can, but I'm just not successful otherwise. However, I will keep trying. I will keep trying to improve my tone and inflection to be warmer. In the meantime, please don't take my tone personally. It is truly a part of who I am. Tonight, I want to make a commitment to all stakeholders to personally do my part to learn and improve along the way. Constructive criticism is always appreciated. Could things have gone better in the last meeting? Resoundingly, yes. I accept responsibility for that, and I will do my part to improve. We do know as a board, and I will again speak for myself, I do know how hard everyone is working to get this right. Please be assured that we as a board are also working just as hard to get this right. And I'm confident that we will be successful together. To move on from the last meeting, I did have the privilege of being involved in another diversity empowerment committee meeting. That's the new name for our diversity, equity, and inclusion committee is the diversity empowerment committee, which went very well. Always learning process. This time we looked at some specific data related to our staffing and our student populations, and we're going to take some action and create some goals to help improve those things that we're finding out based on the data. I also attended a webinar on diversity from NSBA and how you can, some things that you could do to help eliminate or reduce the disparity that you might have between various diverse populations. In addition to that, I have various chats and meetings with Superintendent Gunning to keep abreast of everything that's going on. As we all know, it's changing on a very regular basis. And most importantly, in the last month, I had the privilege of doing a walkthrough with Superintendent Gunning of Corte Sierra Elementary and Rancho Santa Fe. It was a little strange to see the teachers in their classrooms without physical students being there. That definitely takes some getting used to, a little spooky even, if you will, but it was very encouraging to see the engagement that was happening between all those faces on the screens and the actual teachers and the effectiveness. I was surprised at that and the connection that was happening even in the distance learning format. That's everything for me, Melissa.
Thanks, Kim. So Kim started on something I was going to address as well, because again, like she said, we can only talk here at board meetings, and we did get some feedback about our tone and the line of questioning, and I try to be very positive, and I have a lot of faith in our district that they are doing everything they can. Our teachers are working incredibly hard every day. Our staff is working very hard to support them, and I hope that at no time when we are up here asking questions, any of them feels like we don't value them, because we do tremendously. I can speak for myself there, I can't speak for everybody else, but I value our teachers and our staff, support staff, admin, everybody very much. I know that we are doing everything we can. Nobody expected us to be in this situation. Nobody could have possibly predicted that this is what we would be doing right now in a million years, but here we are. And so if my tone came across or made anybody feel like they were not valued in any way, I do apologize for that, because that's never, ever my intent. However, I do feel as a board member, we are elected to be up here and ask questions, because we have to make very difficult decisions, especially right now, and we want to make sure that we are getting all of the facts that we can in order to make the best decision possible. And so I will continue to ask questions, and I try my best to make sure that I let people know what those questions are ahead of time. But I think it's important that we ask these questions in this public setting, because the community has these questions. I work very hard to try to incorporate questions that I receive in emails or phone calls, or people reach out to me through social media, people that don't know me. Like, we are reached out to in every which way possible, all the time, with questions and feedback. And so I do the best I can to incorporate the things that I'm hearing from people in the community into my questions that I ask, whether it's just directly to Superintendent Gunning or if it's in this meeting when we are discussing certain topics, because I think it's important. We have the community more than ever watching our meetings, and they are paying attention now in a way that they never really were before. So that's why we need to ask these questions, and we need to have the community hear the answers so they understand why we're making the decisions that we are. And again, it is not to question this district or say that they aren't doing a fantastic job. I think our superintendent's great. I think all our staff is great. So I just want to make sure that I make that very clear. I ask the questions because I feel that that's my job, and I take this job very seriously. So I'm going to continue to do that because that's the job that I was asked to do by voters. So as far as what I've been doing this month, we are all following data from the Department of Health, because since our last meeting, they decided to come out with, another new way to look at things rather than just county, now it's district, and it's changing every day. So we're just all trying to keep up with it. I've had multiple conversations with Superintendent Gunning. She's very good about saying, yes, I will call you right back, because I call her all the time to ask her questions about what we're doing and why and what's happening. And she's very good about answering my questions. And so I've just been trying to follow that. We have received, I don't know, dozens and dozens and dozens of emails, and I'm going to try my darndest to reply to all of them, because I also got some feedback that not all the board necessarily responds to emails, and that there are people that don't necessarily appreciate that. And while we as a board thought, as long as you're getting a response from one person consistently, that would help. If the community wants to hear from all of us, that might not always happen, but I'm going to do my best as a board member to try to make that happen. So in trying to respond to all emails, I also am a parent of 4 children, 2 of which are in the Litchfield district and have been doing this digital learning. One of the things, feedback I have seen in online forums, is that people don't realize we are all parents up here, and that all of us that are up here right now have children in the district. I'm a parent with a child that has autism and is on an IEP, so I'm right there with those parents that are having to work with their special needs children at home. And I sit with my daughter every day, pretty much all day long during the school day, and help her through her learning. And one of the things I can say is that getting to sit with her and do almost 6 weeks now of 3rd grade is that, wow, like I'm so impressed at how much they're able to do in their class every day in a digital setting. Her teacher and I'm just going to say, her teacher is amazing. Mrs. Olson from Corte Sierra, and I don't usually do this, she is amazing. And she has got these kids practicing their foundations and writing stories and reading stories and comprehending things. And I was very blown away by the work that she's able to do. And our specialist teachers, when they go to specials, they're also engaging these kids, even though they're home on the computer. And is this the ideal situation? Not at all. All the speakers that spoke tonight, I feel for all of you. We had a high schooler that just graduated. I have a high schooler that just graduated. I have a 9-year-old. My 9-year-old special needs. My high schooler that graduated last year is at home helping. So I sympathize with everybody that spoke tonight and everything you said. And I just want you to know that we are trying our best to make the best decisions we can for everyone. And it's really difficult. But at the end of the day, none of us think that we want kids to be home and not learning in the classroom. So I'm really hopeful that we get kids in the classroom as soon as it is safe for them to do it. And I'm excited to see where we're heading right now. We're heading in the right direction to have our kids in school soon. So.
All right. So I know that you guys are saying, I'm not going to speak for the board, but I'm going to kind of take a little different tack, and I'm going to say a little bit that I'm going to. Just in that, there are people up here, we are all from very different perspectives, very different fields. Our children are different. And I think that's part of what makes this board so good. In the way that I'm speaking for everybody is that I know that every single person up here is making the best decision they can with all the right intents. A couple of years ago, when I went to board retreat in San Antonio, we went, or not retreat, but to the convention, a huge percentage of those classes that were part of that convention were simply about the board getting along and being productive. I mean, literally, probably half of them. And that's never been an issue. We may look at things differently. We may sometimes have different opinions, but we respect each other. And I respect the fact that every single person up here absolutely cares best about what's what's best for kids and what's best for this district and the people in it. So maybe I'm stepping forward a bit, but in that way, I'm gonna say it's for all of us, because I believe that in my heart, 100% to be true.
And part of the reason I feel like I can,
There. Been doing this long enough, I think I know how to not turn the button off. And that's sort of my segue into, this is my 6th year on this board. I've learned a lot, and I officially decided not to run again. A lot of it goes into what they were speaking about earlier, in that the amount of time and commitment to do this job, because it is absolutely a job appropriately, it's just not something I have right now. I don't feel that it is fair for me to continue when I don't feel like I can really do the job to the level that it really deserves to be done. It was super hard. I kind of hemmed and hawed for a long time, because what my heart and my brain were saying were two completely different things. And so that's kind of where I am. So I am very sadly going to have probably just a few more meetings, and then you will see some new faces up here.
well, I'm not prepared to respond to that yet, so we're gonna wait a few minutes. I'll just leave it at that. December is a very long way away, so we're going to keep time as long as we can keep her. But thank you for those reports. I just wrote a few comments today in light of the fact that I know we have a very long meeting, and I tend to be long-winded, and I can just go off on my own. So I wrote a few comments just to say what I wanted to say, and then we can move on in the agenda. So I first want to start by saying how proud I am of all of the hard work our district has put into making distance learning successful. This has been a challenging time for so many people, and I'm thankful that our parents and caregivers have stepped up and done the hard work of helping guide your students every day through their schoolwork. I'm encouraged to see that so many of our staff, parents, and community members have started joining our recent governing board meetings via YouTube, and have sent emails to the board regarding the pressing issues of the district. This has not always been the case, this level of participation. So this engagement will only strengthen our ability to do our jobs up here as we better understand the needs of our community, our staff, and our students. Our administrators, principals, teachers, classified staff members, and countless other district employees have poured their heart and soul into the last 6 months. They have stepped up when the chaos was at its height. They have continued to battle the unknowns to create the best learning environment they can for our students. Nobody is perfect, and mistakes have surely been made along the way, but our staff has continued to adapt and learn, and for that, I'm so very thankful. As mentioned previously, the board has received some important feedback that I wanted to address as well. It was shared that the board sometimes can be harsh with our words or ask questions that make it appear we don't have confidence in our district counterparts. This cannot be further from the truth. Our first priority is to the students of this district, and as you've heard tonight, we take that very seriously. We analyze seemingly impossible situations, and we collaborate with the district to arrive at the best possible conclusion. We know we will not please everyone, but we do our best to be fair, ask questions, and maintain transparency because our community demands it. This sometimes means we'll ask tough questions, and we will be forced to have difficult conversations. But this is part of the process, and it's important to achieving the best results for our students, which is why we're all here. We always welcome feedback and do our best to address it and learn from it, and I make that personal commitment as well, as we said here tonight. So thank you again to all the staff members, parents, community members, grandparents, caregivers, siblings, aunts, uncles, I mean, everyone that is pitching in. Your hard work is what is making this year successful, and I truly appreciate you. Okay, so we will move on to item 6A. This is our consent agenda items. So if there is no discussion, or if anyone doesn't want to pull up any items from the consent agenda, then I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
I move that we accept the consent agenda as written.
I I second.
Any questions or discussion? No? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Motion carries. So that will take us all the way to section 14 under action and discussion. If you're following along on the agenda. First, we will have 14B, since there were no items removed from the consent agenda, we will skip over item A. 14B is the 2021 school year calendar change, moving parent-teacher conferences from October to December. We will have Mrs. DeCoste presenting for us.
Board members, thank you. Yes, we're asking to push parent-teacher conferences back this 3 earlier these days we have right before October break, so that our teachers have an opportunity to hopefully get their kids back in person, get some assessments done, have some growth and some things to report to parents come December, because October would be a really short timeline to turn around. Plus, it also creates an inconsistency for parents just getting back and then have 3 early release days and then an entire week off. There's none to limited financial impact, so we're just swapping days for days, so people that will normally work, would normally work, would not work, so. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I just want to make a point of clarification to make sure that we're talking about the same days. So September 30th, October 1st, and October 2nd, which are the 3 days just prior to our fall break, will now be replaced with December 16th, 17th, and 18th, which will then be the 3 half days prior to our 2-week winter break.
Yes.
Correct, okay. Just want to make sure you know what we're talking about. Are there any questions for Mrs. DeCoste or comments about that? No? Okay. I agree. I think it makes a lot of sense. If we are lucky enough to get back in school, we will literally be back in school just days before, we're able to do parent-teacher conferences. And even, although you didn't mention even from a safety perspective, I think it does make sense to try and limit exposure for more guests to be coming up to the schools until we're ready to have them. So I agree that would be a good decision. I will move to approve the school calendar change as presented.
I will second.
Okay, any questions? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're going to skip CD for now. There's going to be at the bottom, so we're going to continue talking about our school reopening and changes to that. So we will go to 14F, which is the approve the purchase of contracted janitorial services through the One GPA cooperative contract. And I believe Superintendent Getting.
Madam President, members of the governing board, and I'm sure Mr. Spivey will chime in if I miss anything here tonight. This approval of this purchasing agreement will be for services to come in and provide after the end of the cleaning round every evening to disinfect every classroom so that we can confidently and guarantee that every classroom has been sanitized or disinfected prior to the next day. They utilize kind of like a fog spray method that they will come in and use to do every single classroom, all the high frequency areas, the front offices, our district office, support services, and technology. This program, we will be utilizing our education stabilization grant for this, and the anticipation is approximately around $70,000 a month, with asking for a cap not to exceed $700,000. And we know that in the future, if our times should change, after 90 days, we will be able to provide a 30-day notice of cancellation. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I will open the floor for comments, questions.
I will start by saying when I first saw the dollar amount for this service that I wasn't sure we would need
potentially in, let's say, March or April of next year, I was very hesitant to get on board. But knowing the comments that you just made as far as that we can cancel with notice is reassuring to me personally. My only reservation that remains is about the funding piece, because we don't know exactly what that stabilization grant is going to look like. Yet I understand that we want to have this in place before students come back. So can you tell me more about that, or what would happen if the stabilization grant doesn't come to be? Just help me get more comfortable with the funding part of it, because I think it's a great idea. I mean, I think the safety aspect, I'm on board. I can't speak for everybody else. I think we're all on board with that, because we want things to be as safe as possible. My only hesitation is the funding part.
Definitely, and I'll have Wendy chime in to kind of discuss that piece. We do have 3 grant opportunities, and each grant has a little slightly different criteria. So the Education Stabilization Grant was the grant of CARES money through our state. And so that was a grant that Wendy so graciously worked so hard to get submitted last Friday on time, a little early. So I'll let Wendy kind of share overarching of all of the different grants.
Thank you, Superintendent Ganning, President Clymer, governing board members. So there are 3 different grants to assist school districts. There's a FEMA grant. When it first came out, we chose not to participate in FEMA. It's very restrictive. The requirements for procurement are really high, the federal requirements, and they're difficult to comply with. The second is the Governor's Stabilization Grant, which for us is our largest grant since we did have such a large drop in enrollment. I'm estimating it'll be around $7 million. And that is to also help offset the loss to our MED funds for the students' loss. So it will be used to cover our costs through December 4th for positions such as our health positions, custodial positions, some transportation members, also our on-site learning will be out of the stabilization funds. So it will be at least $7 million for that. The other pot is CARES funding that's called ESSER. And that is a little more restricted, but it does go until September of next year. And that one we would be able to apply also for these types of services. So we have about 7.7 million between those 2.
Okay, so my hesitation here is I know we get other types of grant funding, like Title I funding, and we do that every year, so I feel like it's consistent, we kind of know what we're getting into there. So in that respect, kind of spending the money before we actually get it, I feel comfortable with. But since this is a totally different program, from what you've read and what I was doing the application and the webinars that you attended and all of that, is there, what's the possibility that we would get denied funding, or it would be significantly lower than we expected? Or when will we know what those numbers are going to be? Do you know any of, and you might not know, and that's fine. This is totally, I know this is not a normal thing, so if you don't have the answers, that's fine too.
So the stabilization grant is based on our 40th day, which will be until September 30th. And then it also depends on the number of days that we are distance learning versus in-person learning. So until we have that information, we won't be able to calculate the exact amount. But during the webinars, it's been said over and over that the governor is committed to giving every district their funding. So if ours was around $7 million, we'll make sure that we have a way to be funded for that.
But just to continue on that line of questioning, the stabilization grant, again, I know there's a few different ones, so I might be mixing these up, so please correct me if I'm wrong. But the stabilization grant, the purpose was that we were losing funding by being in a distance learning situation. And so that was basically to stabilize us to basically either our 40th day or prior year, whichever was more. So this isn't additional funding we would have received. Had this been a normal school year, this would just be our typical funding. So even though it's $7 million, which sounds like an awful lot of money we need right now, it's not $7 million additional dollars, it's $7 million we would have gotten had this been a typical school year. Is that correct to say?
That is correct. But it also has somewhat limiting purposes. For an example, I would have thought we'd be able to include teachers because their positions have drastically changed. I mean, they have to learn online. They're now helping disinfect the classrooms. They're doing a lot of other duties. And it specifically says we cannot use the funds for teachers. So, you know, we're just trying to be creative and make the purchases we know to make this a safe place for the families to return and the children. And that's one of the things we really think we need to do is disinfect our campuses.
And then this is going to be a little bit out of order, but I think these are important to talk about together because they combined are over $1 million. So the next item on our agenda is approving temporary staffing for disinfecting our classrooms. So really my question is, I know we'll get to that one next, but my question is, how do those things lay on top of each other? And $1 million of money that we don't have is $1 million we don't have. So again, I'm right there with you in terms of safety. I feel like this is important, and we've had a loss in our janitorial staff as we have everywhere else, just in staffing in general. So I understand the risk and just, this isn't, I'm stuck on the fact it's not additional money. And we would never spend $1 million. We would never have $1 million to spend in a regular school year. So I just want to make sure that, this isn't going to just wind up coming out of a rainy day fund, because we will wind up spending those dollars the other way, and then we'll be stuck with this contract, So how do those two things correlate?
So the staffing services is to fulfill and keep our staff whole in a janitorial purpose. So for example, to cover anyone on a leave, any absence. That way you always have a pool of janitors that you can pull at any time to perform the duties that we need them to perform. The hard part and the difficult part and during this time is we have to be able to guarantee that we have this safe environment, and we have to be able to guarantee that we're doing all those pieces and all those components. So having these kind of overlap each other. So for the staffing component, we are looking to have a pool of 14 employees to be able to balance any absence throughout the district or any leaves of absence throughout the district. And then I would say approximately around 10 p.m. at night is when the CCS disinfecting company will be coming in to actually then spray every spot. I think that's when we figured out how large we were, when Roger was having to report our square footage, and they were like, oh, okay, well, this is how much it will cost. But to be able to do that in every place and space, I think it's important and it's powerful for our teachers to know that. It's powerful and important for our families to know that, so that when they're walking on campus, especially during this time that, things are getting better, but it's still a little uneasy, that we can state these components with confidence. The other piece, which I should have shared earlier, but I'll share some additional components that we're doing as we talk about the reopening plan here in a little bit too.
Okay, so specifically, if we're asking our custodians that either are part of our staff now or might be part of this temporary staffing program, what would their typical day be, and what would this new company do? If they're overlapping and cleaning the same spaces, I'm not sure.
So what it's like a temp agency. So if I'm absent,
I'm confident in that.
Oh,
I'm saying,
okay.
what are they doing versus what are
the cleaning.
The new disinfectant company doing? What are the differences between those two services?
So our staff, right now, we don't disinfect, we clean, right? So that's the big difference, is we don't have the capability to get the pods that go into disinfecting sprayers. We can get the sprayers all day long, but there's a shortage of pods. So this company will come in, they're not gonna clean anything. Our staff or the janitorial staff will have to come in and do their normal cleaning. This company will come behind them and they're strictly just going to disinfect. So they put a spray in each room, it's got to sit for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, then that room will be considered disinfecting. The janitorial staff, where we're having issues is right now, Dan is saying he's down between 8 and 10 people nightly. So with an increase, we need more cleaning, right? His expectations have gone up because high touch areas, everything, people want more out of his staff, and he's trying to do it with less staff. So we're looking for the additional supplemental staff through a temp agency to help them get through this transition time, and why they set a new expectation. And the disinfecting It's just that it's only gonna be disinfecting coming in behind our staff and disinfecting everyone.
Okay, I understand. Thank you very much. Yes, it was the cleaning versus disinfecting clarification that I needed, so thank you. I'm sorry, that was confusing.
Okay, so I have a question. We were not budgeting originally to spend over $1 million on this. So even though we know we're gonna get this extra fund, like, but this stabilization fund, we assume, we're assuming we're gonna have this. Where in our budget would it look like this was coming out of? And I would start, before you can answer that, if it's rainy day funds, it's raining right now, so I'm not saying don't spend it. I just want to understand where it's coming from.
So first would be stabilization. We can get it through that fund. And then the CARES money is in addition, that's $170,000 is additional. So there are additional funds out there that will be used for the PPE and some of the other costs we have.
But we've already spent that 700,000, right? We've already seen the expenditures for that with staffing additions and PPE and all of that. I mean, is that correct?
Technology items.
Yeah.
But it's just balancing all of the funds. I mean, if you use the stabilization money, then yes, you'll have to use maybe some rainy day money, but really, I just thankful we have the stabilization money.
So I think kind of the question we're circling around is what are we not doing that we would have been doing with that money, right? I mean, and I know, Wendy, you are sort of magical in that you could squeeze blood out of a turnip. So, perhaps that's what's going on, but I think that's kind of what we're like, what are we missing? What are we not getting that we normally get with this stabilization money?
I think to Superintendent Getting has mentioned, we are having savings for the vacancies. There's also substitutes that we have retired at the end of last year and this year. So there was some savings at the end of last year too. So, and keep in mind, this probably will be a 3-month service for each piece. So we're fortunate that Mr. Spider was able to negotiate it down to 3 months because several districts are committing to a year. But we do get the 3-month option. So.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that is a much better way to look at it right now, especially in terms of our funding and not knowing, I trust that Governor Ducey wants to give the districts all the money they deserve. I mean, I do really believe that, but, money is, not available always when you need it. So, we have to at least be careful to the fact that, we may not have what we think we're going to have at the end of the year. So, I think I would have a much harder time with a year contract than I do with 3 months. So I would say, if there's no other conversation or questions, we can move forward for the vote. And I would say that I will move to approve the contracted janitorial services through the one GPA cooperative contract with the caveat that we come back and review the contract at the November 2020 meeting. That would be our 30 days prior to, that would be the 3 months where we would have to then give 30 days. I might not be doing that exactly right, but it's around that time. So we could at least see what we think about it, how it's working. 3 months ago, we had no idea we would be sitting here still talking about hybrid models and in-person and DLA. So I think 3 months will give us a really good idea of what the district will need moving forward. So I will shorten that motion. I move to approve with the caveat of revisiting in November of 2020.
I second.
Okay. Any other comments in regards to that? All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Can I add one last comment? I don't know if any of you can do that.
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to clarify, our cleaners do disinfect, but it's human disinfecting. Does that make sense? Where this company coming in and spraying is every single touch point, every single part in the room.
Okay. So they still, I don't want people to walk away going, oh, they don't disinfect. They do disinfect. Okay, so the cleaners disinfect, but you also.
Then this is a way to guarantee that every single touch point is disinfected.
Thank you, Julie. Sorry. That's not going to change my vote. I'm still going to vote for the disinfectant. Okay, so let's move on to item 14G, approval of purchase temporary staffing services through the state of Arizona cooperative contract. And this is also Superintendent Gunning.
So this one, 14, sorry, the network one?
Temporary staffing services through the cooperative contract.
So I think we kind of already discussed this a little bit, but this was to add the additional 14 temporary employees to the pool so that they can cover any absenteeism or leaves of absence of our janitorial staff to support the cleaning of our facilities every day.
Okay. I will open the floor for questions or comments. I will start with one. This is typically how we do with these cooperative contracts. We have a not to exceed amount because these are temporary workers and we're unsure, obviously between now and well, maybe 2 or 3 months from now, what our staffing might look like. What is the contract language, or what are we committing ourselves to spend? And if we don't need it, are there any? Is it just money not spent?
So I will allow Roger to chime in and clarify. But the beauty of this is also the opportunity of temp to hire. So janitorial staff right now is very difficult to find, and a lot of times we have positions that remain open. So the beauty of this is to be able to have the staff in there, and then if they're doing a great job and they enjoy working for us after a 90-day period, we can then hire them with no additional cost or fee for buyout. Yeah.
This one's pretty easy. So we're asking for 14 temporary employees for 90 days. This is based on, they use our placement chart rate and then the markup cost for the temporary employment agency. After 90 days, we have the option, well, anytime during 90 days, if we're unhappy with one of their employees' performance, we can choose to let that employee go after the 90 days, and at that point, we can reevaluate if we want to continue their service, if we want to look at a direct hire or a temporary replacement. But everything will just be reviewed again in 90 days. So right now, they started sending Dan and I applications. Dan can review them if he wants to interview the employees, if he wants to hire them based on their resume. That's kind of up to him. They'll do background checks to make sure they're compliant with the same things that we would require. But this is really, really flexible. There's no true commitment. At any time with this, we can say we don't want to move forward, and it's totally allowed.
Okay, so if we're doing it based on our placement chart plus, the agency's commission, which would be an obvious structure, really we would just be paying that small additional fee. Because if we were fully staffed in that department, we would be paying those, what would be our placement chart anyway. So really, we're just talking about the commission fee would be an extra expense to us.
And right now, we're seeing commission fee ranging between 37 and 42%.
Okay. So the amount that's listed here, which is not to exceed $235,000, is that just the commission price?
No.
Or that's the whole thing?
That's the entire thing, assuming that we have all 14 employees the entire 90 days. It's a worst case, potentially, most likely it's gonna end up being a little bit cheaper.
Okay. So, right, so it really the additional cost of the district due to COVID and the situation we're in is significantly lower because we would have been paying those folks anyway. Okay, that's exactly what it needs to be. Any other questions about that? Okay, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the purchase of temporary staffing services through the state of Arizona cooperative contract as presented.
I second.
Any last minute questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're going to skip over H just for now, and then we're going to continue on with our reopening COVID discussion items in 14I. If you're following along the agenda, it is discussion and consideration to approve the timeline for reopening, recommendation to phase into hybrid learning model. That is a mouthful. This is going to be presented by Superintendent Gunning.
I got you.
Madam President, members of the governing board, we would like to present to you and make recommendations to phase in the hybrid model within our district. First, let's review our mission to connect, educate, and empower our LESD family and community. And we saw this evidence trifold over and over again from our staff and of course all of our families stepping up to support our children during this time. What we believe is academic excellence, well-being, teacher quality, people first, preparedness for life, and communication. When we started this journey, we wanted we asked actually our governor in our state to put together some health benchmarks for us. As we know, I am not a health expert and I was not sure exactly what guidelines to follow in the practice of reopening. And just not really sure exactly what are strong metrics and what are not strong metrics as we were just receiving data. Some of the locations that we went to obtain information and to monitor, as a lot of you are monitoring on a daily basis, is our Maricopa County Department of Health. They've done an amazing job putting together very detailed metrics, even for our district specifically. They have the school reopening dashboard and guidance, level of spread occurring in our community, and this information is updated every Thursday. You would be amazed at how excited we are on Thursdays, especially this last Thursday when it was updated early. So we were just super excited about that. Let's look at those measurements and those benchmarks that we're trying to strive for. So the community spread benchmarks that we're looking at are from a minimal, moderate, and substantial. We started off this year in the substantial arena with our cases over 100 per 100,000. We had over 10% positivity, and the COVID-like illnesses were fluctuating between the red and the yellow arena. This was something in the beginning of the year that we just weren't sure exactly what was going to transpire, but we were so thankful and so grateful for every single person in the county to really step up, mask up, and really take this seriously. And as we have traveled to each benchmark, we monitor these benchmarks for a 2-week time frame. Within that 2-week time frame is how you can move to another level. So in order to move to a yellow, you have to maintain yellow in all 3 categories. You can have some greens, but no reds for a 2-week period. Within that, to make things even a little more complicated, when they looked at percent positive, they also want that to be 7% or less. So that was something we were definitely monitoring in conjunction with considering to reopen. The other piece that the county wanted us to look at is from the Arizona Department of Health. They looked at either a decline in cases or cases under cases per 100,000. Our county, because of the density of our county, recommends to look at the cases. So that's where we maintain our focus. Let's look at our current county data. This was as of 8/16. Cases per 100,000 were 42, looking really good. Percent positive, 5.2, and COVID-like illness, 3%. Now let's look at our current district data. Cases per 100,000 is 37.08 as of last Thursday, which is in the yellow. The week before, it was a little bit higher. It was around 90. So we definitely saw a drastic drop this last week. 90 was still in the yellow. Our percent positive is 4.35, which is in the green, and our COVID-like illness is 2% in the green. So as we were kind of going into this time frame and really looking and feeling and hearing from not only our staff members, our teachers, our families, we knew that we wanted to make sure before making any decisions that it was safe to return. And we feel that it's very important to get our children back into classrooms as soon as possible. Now, one of the things with that, in addition, is to monitor and consider the reopening plan from the Arizona Department of Health. And one of those pieces is when it looks at minimal to moderate level, which is the yellow level of these scores, it talks about a hybrid model. and it lists that specifically and really focuses in on that 6 feet distancing. So though I don't feel confident and comfortable to say I can have 5-day and hybrid right now because we're not in the greens, I do feel comfortable and confident recommending the hybrid model. So let's look at our current instruction and what we're doing now. All students are online distance learning. Digital Learning Academy is also transpiring and moving forward as we speak. We have our self-contained programs back on campus, and we have our free on-site learning support at Dreaming Summit, Woodlawn Creek, and Colorado Elementary. We propose moving into a phase into hybrid learning model with flexibility to resume in-person learning if LESE reaches minimal exposure levels of green prior to the recommended date. So basically, going back to my word of the year of flexibility, because this is so important. We want to be able to provide our families enough notice, but have the flexibility to move to 5-day in-person as quickly as possible. So what would that look like? So our recommendation would be to look at a gradual roll-up of this model. So beginning Wednesday, September 16th, we would begin with kinder through 2nd grade. That will allow those students to get back on campus, to have access to their teachers, and for their teachers to have ample time to provide the training necessary, and for our leaders and staff to readjust and modify any practices with a smaller group of children on campus. Then we would have 3rd through 5th grade come on Monday the 21st, and 6th through 8th grade on Monday, September 28th. What would a sample hybrid schedule look like? So for example, if you had a class of 32 students, you would divide them into 2 groups, a group A and a group B. There would be 2 days of in-person, regular school hours, and 3 days online. Looking at like an A-B schedule, so group A would attend Mondays and Wednesdays, and online the other 3 days, and group B would attend Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then all would be online on Fridays. How did we come up with a schedule and come up with this information? We had our supporting teacher subcommittee that worked on this work, along with other stakeholders that helped in designing the hybrid model. The other part that we took into account was our parent survey that we did in June and asked for what was the preference. Was it a Friday or a Wednesday? And 61% of our families stated that Friday was their selected day over a Wednesday. So we wanted to hold on to that valuable information as we made this decision. Our middle school staff members and their principals have met and made a plan. And I think it is a doable plan because we know, fingers crossed, it's temporary. And we're hoping to move into 5-day green as quickly as possible. So for example, if we're looking at this and talking about that flexibility, I would like to provide our families and our staff and transportation, food services, facilities, a 1-week, 1-day notification. So a good example would be if this Thursday we have green, and we're all green, super excited. The next Thursday, 9/17, we were all green. With a 1-day, 1-week notification, we would be able to allow our middle school and all of our 5-day to return on Monday, September 28th. The other important piece of this is our—
Jody, I'm sorry,
Oh,
just
I'm sorry.
repeat that sentence one more time that you just said about the 28th. I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I understood what you said.
So if we had, we received an all green this week on 9/10 and an all green on 9/17, then we would give our family the 1-week, 1-day notification, which would mean that on Monday the 28th, we would be able to return to our all green or our 5-day model, along with our hybrid model. And I'm glad that you asked that because I definitely want to be able to clarify for our families. We're still going to honor the request of our families who selected hybrid. So the ones who are aligned for hybrid, that will continue on, and it would just be the ones transitioning to the 5-day that would transition when all green occurs.
Okay, and the 28th is the recommended week that we would start grades 6 through 8. So if you are 6 through 8 in person, you would just start in person on, you would never go hybrid, basically, if we're able to align with the metrics. Unless you chose hybrid, and then you would stick with hybrid. Okay, I understand.
Can I have
one thing, just while we're clarifying? Because I chose for my child 5-day in person. So just for me, clarify. My son is in 5th grade. So if this is how we decide to proceed, he would start in a hybrid, even though I chose 5-day. He would start in a hybrid on Monday, September 21st, depending if he's A or B. And then once we get the green for 2 weeks, then I would get the go ahead, since that's the model that I chose, that he would start 5-day with all of the green.
Correct. We would give you as a parent, a 1 week, 1 day, because we would notify you as soon as possible on that Thursday, so that you would have then a full week and a day to make preparation plan.
Okay, so all students who are not in the Digital Learning Academy would start in the hybrid learning model.
Correct. Okay. Because we're currently only in the yellow, and we have not obtained a full green yet. I feel like I have a new language. Yeah, all of these different pieces. So we continue to promote and ask our families to reference our webpage for their primary resources, and we continue to monitor and update our county and district data. I monitor both simultaneously. We'll notify our families and staff as we approach each phase, and we'll share information on healthy procedures and other relevant topics as we transition. We want to give families as much notice as possible to plan for the phasing into hybrid and then into our in-person learning. Another question that had come out a little bit about this is what happens after we open and what if something transpires. I will continue to monitor the benchmarks, but after we open, we go into kind of a different mode, so to speak. At that point, then we'll be working hand in hand with our county health department on any issues or cases that come up. The county health department will guide us step by step on what we need to do. So they would let us know if we needed to quarantine a class, if we needed to quarantine or shut down a grade level, or if it were an entire campus. Along with Dr. Chris and Dr. Sonnenschein, they both stated that if we were monitoring our data, and let's say we did go back into the red, I would then reach back out to them. If that was over a 3-week period of solid red, then I would be reaching out to see, is there something that we need to do as a community and for our schools at this time? And so that could be, going back into a distance learning step. So it is definitely a year of flexibility, but we're feeling really comfortable with our county health department and their guidance, and they've been walking us through step by step on each step of the way as they even need additional information regarding COVID. And I like the fact that the benchmarks will still be there, but they'll provide us the guidance when we need to close either a grade level, a classroom, or a school. A reassurance that we do have all of our steps and procedures in place for exactly what happens and what transpires if a student or a staff member is suspected of having symptoms or been exposed and or has tested positive. Employees work directly with our human resources department, and our students work directly with our nurses office, as well as principals are involved on both sides, as well as directors, whoever the supervisor is. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. The other continued safety components that we're adding in, sorry, one more thing, is we're also going through the Healthy Verify process. So we are going through where we have submitted all of our safety protocol mitigation strategies to Healthy Verify to certify that we have everything in place. And we're in that process right now. And it is staff members from ASU as well as a medical doctor from Burroughs Neurological Center going through along with their epidemiologist to review all of our protocols to ensure the safety. And so we're right in the middle of that process now.
And do they provide feedback? I mean, if something could be changed or could be done differently, they actually provide those steps for us to change our policies or protocols or whatever. That's great. Okay, I will open the floor for questions and comments. I'll just start Pam with you and then go to Mike.
Sure. I just have a clarifying question based on information that was provided in our public comment earlier. So we just approved this disinfecting that's going to be happening in the classrooms and all of our areas nightly, which I think goes a long way for ensuring safety on our campus. Ms. Reyes had stated earlier that there are still some basic type things that teachers, I believe, are reporting are not available. What's the everyday way that those supplies, whether it's PPE, once the students start coming back, for students or for teachers to procure those things that they need?
So any staff member that's in need of either hand sanitizer or any additional PPE, they work directly with usually their office manager and or principal, but typically your office manager would place the orders. We have a COVID warehouse that is fully stocked and supplied. So it's not like you have to order it and then wait for it to come in. The supplies are already there and then they'll be sent right out. We have lots and lots of hand sanitizer and lots of different PPE because we've had I think it was like a week and a half ago, over 8,000 masks donated in addition to everything that we've been purchasing along the way.
Okay, so it sounds like we have the items that are necessary, but maybe there's a communication piece that might be missing with that. Okay, great, just checking on that. That's my only question. Thank you.
Okay, so we've gotten a lot of feedback from people about this issue. And I've kind of tried asking some clarifying questions about, we've had a lot of feedback from teachers, both please open in hybrid and don't open it. In looking at this and opening in hybrid, the metrics are 2 weeks left, right? So we can kind of know where we're headed in the next few weeks based on what we've seen the last 2 weeks because of the fact that they're last weeks. So we kind of have an idea of where we're headed. And so my concern is the amount of work we're asking everybody to do for possibly 2 weeks at a time. So this is why I'm looking for some clarification on what exactly, if we approve this hybrid plan tonight, what do we have to do, like, as far as transportation goes, like changing how we track attendance? And I don't need specific details, but just the work that's gonna happen for that, especially if in 2 weeks, again, we're looking to switch all that up once again.
Well, that's why we wanted to definitely give the 1 week and 1 day notification to just kind of align all of those pieces. Attendance would transpire just like attendance does. So coming back in person is actually even easier and easy to do. Even if you have partial of your students in person, you'll be doing what you already know and have done for years with what you just learned how to do over the last 4 or 5 weeks of schooling. So they would just transfer that. I don't think that's not a necessarily new learning in that component or that piece. When we sat down and looked at how much notice we needed in relation to facilities, in relation to making sure we have the disinfecting and all of the cleaning and the staff in place, that was the other piece and other component that was really important. And then also sitting down to talk to Tommy about how fast we have to turn things around. And it's actually pretty fast and speedy with that.
What we're planning with the current proposal that's going out there is we're gonna build the routes as is K and everything's going. So if we start at 16, okay, the buses are gonna go kinder, first and second grade only. That following Monday, when we do third, fourth, and fifth, and the routes aren't changing, we're just adding third, fourth, and fifth graders into it. And for that week, that's where the routes will be done for the first or second tier. That third week, the week of 28, we'll just add the middle school routes in. We haven't started yet, but they're going to be set in place. We're just going to slowly add more students to a route. And a lot of it is, I really like the idea because now we know exactly where our first and second graders are for a couple days. And then also we're going to add our third and fourth graders in, and then our sixth, seventh, and eighth. So the routes aren't going to change until we start in person. And Susan, our router, who is absolutely amazing, and I probably owe her $1 million for all that she's been doing to get us going for this, and her poor line is crazy. She's working 2 separate routing sets right now. We're working hybrid, we're working in person. And I think that's where our struggle is, you know, because we have something there, but the route changing, that's not an effect, you know, and I really like this slowly bringing kids in. I would love to see this at the beginning of the year, but that's a whole school. That's a whole other proposal. This is going to give us that little extra where we can really get to know our kids. And then, you know, we have this set of tutor first second on Wednesday, we'll have another set on Thursday. So when we come back Monday, we'll see those first set from Wednesday, and we're gonna add our third for fifth grader. So it does not affect us that much. It's when we get to be in person, is where we have the big change, and we're preparing for that.
Okay, so along the lines of transportation, then, since it says in hybrid, we have to do 6 feet of distance, how are we handling the buses with our students? Are we able to have them one kid seat when we do separate model?
No. If we did one kid per seat, an 84 passenger bus becomes a 26 passenger bus. And in some of our neighborhoods, we pick up 35, 40 kids at a stop. So it would take 2 trips just to that one stop to take the school to come back. That's gonna put us 25, 30 minutes behind on every school. So first year, that puts us now an hour late for second tier, which puts us 2 hours late for third tier. And in the afternoon, we would be doing the same. I've talked to some other districts, they're not doing one student per seat, they're doing the mask mandate, they're not having any issues with it at all, students are sitting there with masks. And they're more excited to show off what masks they have than anything right now, so.
I guess that's the important piece is the mask, if they're family members, who can cohort it to the, you know, same seat. It's just me, so.
Okay. And then I guess my next question is, we've gotten some feedback from middle school, I've gotten a lot of feedback from middle school teachers, and you and I talked about middle school before, and there's been some feedback that I'm asking to wait, not necessarily start in hybrid, when we're so close to being able to possibly just open fully. So I'd kind of like to know why we wouldn't consider that as an option of just waiting on middle school.
I think, for me, I think it's getting our children back, and I think we need to get them back. And even if we did wait, who's to say that it wouldn't be still waiting? The other piece is, I think it's a beautiful thing to start right before fall break, to have that time together, and then have that week in between to fix anything or make changes that we know our families are going to want. That gives us a little bit of a lag time too, to be able to do that. Also, we know that it's okay to delay our middle schoolers a little bit, but we're still also seeing threat assessments come in, just the needs of our kids. And so I think it's really important, if we're able to get them back, so that they can start those connections. That opening week will be a rebuilding week. It'll be like the first day of school, and reconnecting with their friends and their teacher in a way that they haven't ever experienced before, because it is a new setting and a new environment. I think it's so important. So even though it might be a little bit of a juggle, I think it'll be a short juggle for a short period of time, and with that focus on definitely that connection time and spending time together and getting back into the rhythm of school. We have had the principals talk to all of their teachers, and I know there's some principals in the audience today that can even share some of their conversations. But we know that the people that had their mindset on hybrid from the very beginning, those teachers, they have a different mindset, right? They've been planning this for weeks. So we're allowing grace for our 5-day people. Like, give yourself some grace. This is a temporary time frame. The main component is connecting with your children, getting them reacclimated to that school setting, to all of the new protocol that we're asking of them. And I think that gave a sigh of relief, because our teachers are perfectionists and they like to excel at what they do. So I think letting them know we're not going to be monitoring and checking off things. We're just excited to be able to see you with children in your classrooms.
Can I add one more thing to that? We didn't mention this yet tonight in the meeting, but one other thing that I see as a pro to getting the kids back in school is that the USDA approved the free meals through the end of the year. And so for those kids that, I know not all our kids need that, but we have kids that need that, and getting them back, even if it's in the hybrid model, is going to help us supply that basic need that those kids have. So I feel like that's also a pro in moving forward with full hybrid.
We're very grateful for that extension.
Okay, I have two more questions, sorry. My next question is, for families that see this trend that we're gonna open fully, possibly in a couple of weeks, and are not wanting to put their kid in hybrid because that's not what they picked for their kid, they picked 5-day, are we going to allow any room for them to just somehow stick with this for the next few, the distance learning for a couple of weeks, and then just come back when we're fully back?
So my answer to that is we would handle that as if any person was going to have any absence. The same as those families that travel on vacation throughout the year. So I would have them work directly with their teacher and their principal to work out what would work best for their family.
Okay. And then lastly, we did a lot of surveys of parents and staff to figure out our options, and clearly we've been thrown many monkey wrenches. Every time we come up with a plan, we have a monkey wrench that makes us have to change it. But we didn't survey our staff about this, and we didn't survey our parents about this. So was that considered a this?
So we didn't survey our staff about this because we had the principals go out and talk to their staff members individually. The monkey wrench that was kind of thrown into this is exactly what we're talking about with the Arizona Department of Health putting out the reopening guidelines, because in their original plan, we had hit every model and we had hit every component. And so that's what our thought was, that we would be able to meet the free on-site learning, meet the needs of our hybrid folks, and also the digital learning academy. So with that, kind of threw in a little wrench. We also didn't want to survey our families yet, because that kind of shook up everything in all the classes, and we are not able, our staff, to be able to handle a massive change of that at this time. So we wanted to gradually move folks back in, and then that way we can take on the movement of our families on a one-to-one basis as we're approaching the end of the quarter.
Right, that's not exactly what I meant. Like, I meant for serving our families, like, how do you feel about coming back all hybrid versus waiting and just coming back and making us a full week kind of thing? Because like, that's some feedback that I got from families is, I'm all in for coming back 5 days, but I don't want this middle part. When my kid is doing okay, doing hybrid or doing distance learning, why am I gonna make them have to upend what they're doing right now for this certain schedule that's just gonna change in a couple weeks again, so.
And maybe that's something we could have done in hindsight. But I think because we were getting so much response and feedback, even prior to us even stepping in, a tippy toe into the yellow about please open, please open, please open, just felt that it was critical to consider.
I had a question about the, blanked on the healthy monitoring, the
Healthy Verify.
Healthy Verify. So that is basically a service that looks at our protocols. So if, and frankly, probably when there's, somebody who tests positive, whether it's a teacher, student, whatever, those are people that look at that and they look at our systems and say, okay, this hopefully will work. I mean, like everything, right? Everything is changing, but.
It's what you do ahead of time. So what they're doing is going through every single mitigation protocol step to certify that we have established a healthy environment and safe environment for our families and staff to be in.
Awesome. So it's kind of a if then, if this and that, if this and that.
We can post it once we receive the certification on our website, so that all of our families and community can see, as well as the medical director will also offer 2 town halls. So as soon as we get to that, she'll be able to answer any questions or needs in regards to the safety and protocol and mitigation strategies that we have within our district.
All right. So this is already in process. It's just not finished yet.
Not finished.
And then do you know when that process is finished?
We're hoping to have that done prior to the opening.
Fantastic.
Okay, I have a few questions. First, I will agree with everything here in terms of we have had overwhelming feedback, right? And I would say for the most part, both from staff and from parents and community members, whether they be caregivers or, babysitter or whatever for students are somehow involved in all of this. Overwhelming support of bringing kids back in some format. I think a lot of people realize that we are following the benchmarks and we're not ready to come back full time quite yet, but we're working to get them back. And I think
overwhelmingly, everyone is in agreement that the classroom is where students and teachers need to be. We're working towards that. So to everyone who did email, even those that emailed up until probably noon today, when the district email stopped working for a brief period of time, you know, I was reading and trying to absorb all of that information, and I will say overwhelmingly people are ready, which makes me feel a lot more comfortable, you know, with discussing this and moving forward. I just want to clarify, you said it, but I want to clarify it again because I've had more questions about this probably than anything else. Once we vote here to reopen officially, whether that's hybrid and then in person or whatever however those weeks might transpire, we are no longer being guided by the benchmarks. So if the benchmarks go up to yellow, or excuse me, go up to red, or teeter the yellow, or whatever, it might deter us from opening in person completely, but it's not going to cause us to close down schools.
Correct.
Right. So we are now under the protocols of Department of Health, as we normally would, whether we had the measles or the flu or stomach virus or something like that. Obviously, they have additional protocols for COVID, but you understand what I mean. So I just want to make sure everybody sort of listening and here in the audience understands that once we sort of approve to reopen, our strategy shifts a little bit. And we work individually with the county health department on individual schools, campuses, classrooms, down to the student, maybe or teacher level, at that point to mitigate risk and to help people that have either experienced symptoms or do test positive or what have you.
Correct. And like I stated before, if we did notice that we had, Dr. Chris stated 3 weeks in the red as a community, that would be the time that we would definitely, even if we weren't seeing anything in our schools, that we would still reach out to the county health department to say, is there something else that we should be doing?
Okay.
Is there another step that we need to take, and what's your recommendation?
Okay. Okay. Going back to, I forget which slide it was now, you kind of had broken down what does hybrid look like. So even though this will be temporary, another question that I've gotten consistently is, what will hybrid actually look like? Right now, we're in full distance learning, so everyone is online. So let me just set an example. If my child is in the A group, which would lead them, I think, on a Monday, Wednesday class, what do their days look like on Tuesday and Thursday? Is it completely asynchronous learning? Is it a combination of synchronous and asynchronous learning? What are the expectations for parents that are sort of trying to transition into this hybrid format? What do they expect on those days when their teacher is legitimately teaching a full class in person on the days when they're at home?
So we did allow for each campus to kind of talk through that with their teachers, to get input from their teachers about what would work and what it would look like. So, for example, there could be teachers that are like, hey, I just want to do it synchronous. Let me give me my kids, I have my kids online, I have my kids in person, let's go. And then there may be some that need more flexibility, especially like with the middle school with different content. They could have pre-recorded lessons that would transpire during that day or that time. So they're working through the fine, details of that. And especially knowing that there's that one group that will be a temporary piece to their more long-term hybrid, and what does that actually look like? And communicating those schedules with their families as they kind of transition.
Okay, so it'll be done on a school by school level. There are no district expectations.
We thought we wanted to leave, since it's a temporary component and time frame, we wanted to leave that up to the school campus and to give that piece to those teachers to have that flexibility to design.
What about the students that will be in hybrid continually? That even then when 5G in person comes back, they still have elected to stay in hybrid. What will their day continue to look like that? So they'll just basically continue that same hybrid format, or will that change, or will there be district expectations at that time of what hybrid will look like overall, since they'll be doing that for a longer period of time?
So what we did was we gave parameters that they had to fit within, but didn't make it so rigid that this is what you're doing every hour of the day, or this is what it has to be like. So we gave options with synchronous versus asynchronous, so that they had that little bit of flexibility too.
So what those kids start with, they will probably continue to do, is what you mean. So they won't have to transition again if they're.
I think too that teachers will find what's comfortable and what works well for them, and what works well for their kids. So I can see that transition too as they dive into this new mode, where I think those temporary folks in that hybrid, they're just looking at a shorter period of time. Right? So theirs will probably remain very similar for that week and a half, 2 weeks.
Right.
Worst case, on to fall break right after. But I would say the longer term folks, I could see that transition over time as they find out which style really works best and really fits the needs and the needs of their kids.
Once they get into it and figure it out. Okay, great. Just wanted to clarify again, I know we talked about this last time. I know we had a lot of changes in our student count and things like that, and I would expect that we would, now that we are open to see an increase in students coming back, maybe moving to another hybrid or choosing the online program. For those people that are not ready for whatever reason to come back, is our digital learning academy still full? And if it is full, will there ever be a chance or, timeline that you would foresee that there would be people coming into that? Or is it like a one out, one in type of situation, right? I mean, so we don't know until people opt to come back to school if there would be openings there.
So I think we'll see this big shift now as that transition of where people really fit in. I know that there were some folks who selected digital learning academy, but I think they were thinking short term, like distance learning. So I anticipate that we'll see some folks move out, and then that will allow others to move in. But it will be kind of a give and take, because we want to make sure that we're monitoring those class sizes. There are some that are full, and that we would have to say, I'm sorry, there's just not space in the general wait list. There are some that there's space and we can do it, then let's move them, just like we would in any classroom, even within a grade level or within a school campus as well.
So if they're interested, they should apply or notify or whatever, you guys will just keep them, and then as people flow in and out, you'll be able to accommodate those requests. Okay.
And so the main point of contact now will be their site principal. So if family members have questions, or they want to change their mode, or anything along those lines, their principal will be able to meet their needs. Most time.
My last question, it's not even a question, really a comment. I think communication will be key over the next 4 to 6 weeks. I think that going from distance learning, although there probably are hundreds, if not thousands of people watching this right now, there are not 7,500 families, right? Which is what we're used to having, knowing exactly what's going on. So what is the district's plan or, sort of idea of, we're transitioning from distance learning, we're gonna start with a very small portion of our kids, we're gonna add a few more, then a few more, then in the middle of that, oh, by the way, we made the benchmarks, now we're gonna go in person. That's a lot of moving parts. So my heart goes out to you to figure out what that communication plan looks like, but I highly encourage you to overly communicate, and whether it's teacher, principal, district, all 3 levels of whatever we can do, whether it's emails or social media or text messaging. I just feel like the next 4 to 6 weeks are going to be critical in people knowing what's going on or how to figure out where their student fits, because we do have a lot of options, coming at them.
Definitely, and working on our communication already, just based on whatever option and having multiple, whichever button to push, I guess, on which message goes out, that we're ready to roll tomorrow. So we want to be able to communicate and update families, because families knew something that happened or not happened tonight, so we want to make sure we get that out to them. And then doing that weekly, and then also just including in there what to expect from their school. So then they know, oh, okay, well now I'll look for an email from the campus directly or make teacher directly, giving me the details.
Okay. Perfect. That's fantastic. I want to say thank you very much to all the staff members, and Jody, you personally, I know that this is, it's not just coordinating, because they're not just pieces on a game board, right? These are individual students and families, and this is a very big deal to everyone. And, I mentioned earlier, we can't ever make everyone happy, but in this game, we want to make the most people happy, because this is, the rest of their school year, and it's just been so challenging up to this point. So I really appreciate all the work that's gone into trying to figure out how all these pieces fit. And the puzzle isn't going to be complete yet for at least a few more weeks. And so, I would ask parents and
caregivers to just give us a little time to transition into this, but I think, what you've heard tonight is the board and the district is committed to getting our kids back in a safe way, and we've done every single thing I think we could possibly do and spend every last dollar we probably have, to make that, or don't have, to make that safe, and that's, those aren't easy decisions to make, so thank you for doing that. Okay, any last minute questions or comments before we go to vote? Okay, I will entertain a motion. We are again on item 14.
I move to approve the timeline for reopening into a phased hybrid learning model as presented.
I second. Okay. Any final questions or comments? No? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. I think that's a fist bumping back there. All right. Okay. We're making somebody happy. Okay. Wow. I just feel like the weight is just totally lifted off my shoulders. I don't even know where we go from here. Okay. We are item 14J. Approve the benefits assistance position for the 2021 school year only, new job description and salary chart. Hey there, Martha. Thanks for joining us.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dunning, in order to adequately assist our employees with all of their COVID-19 employee-related leave associated with isolation, having a quarantine, emergency leave, I'm here to propose that we add and hire a benefits assistant position, part-time only for this school year only. This will help relieve our current benefits coordinator who's assuming these duties. And so all of these protocols are time sensitive, and our employees are really in need of a point of contact person. Jerry, our benefits coordinator, has done a fabulous job helping our employees, but of course she has her own duties related to insurance and workers' comp. She just has an array of duties that she's responsible for, and really could use some help in our this position. Oh, I did want to mention that it is a position that we do want to reevaluate in May, and once again, it is for this school year only, with an estimated cost of $16,369.
I just want to comment that I think we're all aware of how lean our district runs from an administrative standpoint, especially in the HR department. And so I am in full support of this position.
Agreed. I know we've been having conversations, or at least Jody and I have, for several weeks now in terms of what resources do you really need, right? I mean, even if they're temporary, as Melissa quoted earlier, it's raining very hard, and we are, we're certainly not prepared in terms of adequate staff to handle things like this. And you have a small but mighty department, but I do think it is time that you bring in some folks, or at least one, to help you through all of this. And I think it's also good, at least for our staff too, to have, like you said, a contact person that is going to know everything about COVID-related problems or issues or leave or quarantine, and having sort of that expert in residence right now is something that you probably need, because you guys are probably looking this stuff up every day, trying to figure out, with the ever-changing environment. So I agree. I am in total agreement that we need to beef up our resources for this time to make your jobs a little less stressful during this time, and to make sure these things are addressed quickly. I will go ahead and make a motion to approve the new benefits assistance position as described. Any other comments or questions before we vote? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Monica. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 14K. Approved change to walk boundary for the 2021 school year. And we'll have Tommy present to us. Good evening.
Good evening, President Clymer, members of the Governing Board, Superintendent Gunning. I come to you tonight with one of the hardest things I had to put together to propose. I do not like having to do this, but I'm coming to you with a proposal tonight for our walk boundary. Before we get to that, I want to go over a few things in my department, current staffing, where we're at, survey that was sent to other districts and supervisors across the valley, and then the proposal for policy, the change of policy EEAA for the 2021 school year to extend the current 1 mile walk boundary to 2 miles. The first piece to go over is staffing in our department. We are currently at 57 student transporter positions in our department and 27 monitor positions for the department. We are currently 10 short for student transporters as of right now. 4 of those student transporters are on leave of absence until in-person begins, so I will be reaching out tomorrow with your previous vote here that they will be coming back next week. I do have a fear on some of them, and we'll be asking for the remainder of the year or just a resignation. We have a student transport on leave of absence for the remainder of the year already. And then we have 11 monitor positions open and 1 monitor on leave of absence until in-person begins. So when you put that together, we don't have enough to do and provide this service that we normally provide to our community right now. There are currently no applications for any of our positions. We had 4 leads in May and June. We've reached out to them. With us not being able to give them a solid answer if we're going to have to shut down again come October, November, December, they're not willing to join us. The other issue that we run into is, and it's no fault of our own district, is the restrictions set in place from Department of Motor Vehicles for testing and permitting. It is a 6 to 8 week process for an appointment to get your permit. So if we hired someone tomorrow, we made the appointment, it would be middle of October, end of October before we could get them in to take their permit test. We have to then wait 2 weeks before we can do the driving test. The problem is when you get your permit, there's a 6 to 8 week appointment out before you can do your driving test with DMV. Normally we use another district, but districts are not allowing someone else to come in right now. Same thing we are doing with visitors, minimal spread, keep those out that don't need to be in to keep going. So in potential status, it could be the week of Thanksgiving if I hire someone tomorrow that would be certified to drive a school bus. So with hybrid starting on the 16th now, and then fingers crossed 5 days starts soon after that, it's something that I can't do, unfortunately. We are currently at 30 gen ed routes and 27 special needs routes for this school year. We will need to turn routes to accommodate all of these planned routes right now. Turning routes is not something that the principals over behind my shoulder here are very happy about, because it means we have students arriving 20 to 30 minutes late every morning, and then we have students on campus 30 to 45 minutes late every day after school gets out before bus can come back. Doubling routes where we have 1 bus do 2 at the same time works in some instances, but in some areas I can't put more than 70 kids on the bus. Not something we like to do, for that matter either. It puts a strain on the school staff. The staffing on campuses, we have to adjust hours to stay with kids. Someone to be away from a classroom as they wait for another school bus to arrive. In the morning, we're holding breakfast for students. It sets this train in motion that is hard to stop once we get going with it. Some of our special needs routes may not have monitors this year with the shortage also. And our staff is working on those routes that are in high need first, and those students that are non-ambulatory first, and then working our way down, looking at those to keep it going. Our plan is to get back to normal as soon as possible. And when we look at our 30 gen ed routes, that's a third tier, so our middle schools, because they're wider spread out. We're hoping if we can drop that number, for example, I can get that number down to 23 with this extension of the walk boundary. Our first and second tiers, we may not have to push off the 2 miles. We may still be able to accommodate those that are less than a mile. That's our hope, and that's what we're trying to figure out right now. It's on a pretty decent track, but you guys know when you put something together, you start seeing something, you get to the end, like, yeah, that just didn't work. So we're working on that right now to see how it goes, but this is not a long-term plan. This is not something I want to keep forever. I would love to come back to you December or January and say, we can revise this back to the original. I just can't promise that right now at this point. I did send a survey out to other directors and supervisors across the valley. We have a pretty good tight network where we can talk, and we're sharing all kinds of ideas. And every Friday we do a Zoom call just to talk what each district is doing and how it's going. I'm not sure what happened to that. There we go. The survey was sent out asking basic questions. Has your district decided on an in-person start date? If yes, what is the date? How many approved positions does your department have? How understaffed is your department? With the shortage of employees above normal, are you adjusting routes for coverage? What ideas have you presented to your district admin to help with that? I sent it to 24 districts that range in size from 250 bus routes all the way down to 12 bus routes. So it was a wide range. We had 18 of the districts respond. I did share this with you also. In the responses, the largest, the 30%, was 1 to 5. Those were our smaller districts that responded. Our larger ones are 11 to 15 or 16 to 20 plus short. There is a district in the East Valley that started today. I have not talked to that directly today. They run 240 routes and he is short 53 drivers. I'm not sure how we did it.
How many routes do we drive, just as in, so we can understand where we fall?
We're at 30 gen ed and we're at 27 special needs, so we're 57 routes.
Okay.
On a daily basis, and he runs about 240. So he's also a unified, so there is a difference, but I just, his 52 is like our 16 right now, when you put it into perspective. One of the other questions that I asked about was, with the shortage of employees above normal, are you adjusting routes? Almost everyone said yes, because it's the only thing that we can do to provide that service. And then a breakdown of how they're doing it. Extending the walk boundary, 4 districts are doing that. There are a couple districts only offering special needs transportation and will not be offering gen ed transportation until they can get hired some more individuals to do this. 4 districts are doubling and turning routes to accommodate. Those are some of our smaller districts that have the time and space to do that. Unfortunately, we're not one of those. 9 of them said no suggestions. We're just moving forward as it is. But they are also having everyone in their department drive that can, including mechanics and office staff and directors. So there's no coverage in their office during route times. That makes me very nervous. And just knowing if a bus breaks down, I need someone to be there to help out as quick as possible. And for one of us to be in the office to respond, and if something happens, we can respond to the scene as well. And then adjusting bell times at campuses, there are 4 that are doing that. That is something I spoke with Megan McLean about, was adjusting bell times. It is an option. It is a longer process than what we're doing with this. That process we looked at a couple of years ago when we did the 3-tier system. One that was presented was a 4th tier, and it would have buses arriving as early as 6:55 to drop students off for a 7:15 start and leaving as late as 4:35 for 4:20 dismissal for our 3rd tiers. Now, that is a huge range. It would drop some of our routes, but that is a huge range for parents. I'm not sure how many feel comfortable with us dropping their students off at 6:55 in the morning at school as well. There are some districts that do that, larger than us, but it is one of the options out there. So I come to you tonight with a proposal to make a change to policy EEAA. The current policy reads students who are residents of any school attendance area and live more than 1 mile from the school. The proposal would extend that walk boundary from 1 mile to 2 miles for the 2021 school year. What Susan and I are working on right now is we're building routes for everything that is more than 2 miles. And our registration form that is out for parents right now, there's 1,100, I think the last I checked was like 1,130 that have responded. That was the last time I checked. I'm sure there's more by now. We're accommodating those as much as possible, especially with buses that can go by the area to pick up. At this point right now, it's looking pretty good that we're going to be able to accommodate most of those. A lot of the registrations are for students on an IEP that we already bus, so we're moving them. We're finding a lot of parents that are in Digital Learning Academy registering for a bus, so we're moving them to come off the list also. Or parents that actually live within 1 mile of the school that never receive transportation, we're removing those also. So the number can be a lot lower than what is actually responding. So we are working on that right now. It is looking pretty decent. that we are going to be able to accommodate those that have registered. And then as we go on, the plan is to keep adding more routes back in that we can to that 1 mile instead of going to the 2 miles. The benefits to extending the walk boundary, it allows our department to continue providing services to students with less employees for general education routes. It allows buses to provide timely service to students who reside the farthest distance from the schools. And it's balancing the current staff between student transporters and monitors to continue providing consistent service while keeping everyone employed. The drawbacks is it's an inconvenience to parents for students that previously were eligible for transportation. I think the number that I was looking at earlier was about 700 that it would affect. Out of our 12,000 students, between 5,500 and 6,800 are usually eligible for transportation. They live more than 1 mile. Of that number, we usually transport between 3,500 to 4,500. So when it comes into perspective, we're only transporting about 40% of our total population, and only about 50% of those are actually eligible for transportation too. So this is also an increase in traffic at all the schools for parking lots. And we know our parking lots are not built for that many. It is one of the biggest drawbacks also, but we could also work with the schools on programs of the walking school bus. There's a lot of information from ABQ out there for the walking school bus to eliminate pollution and the car pollution as well. So we can start working on, I know Sarah, Dr. Pearson, when she was at Palm Valley, had a very successful walking school bus program for years. We could look at something like that also to help accommodate. By extending the walk boundary by the 2 miles, it will drop us from 30 gen ed routes to between 16 and 18. And right now what I'm looking at is it looks like about 20, and I may be able to even get that down a little bit lower from that 30. If we can keep it, like I said, at 23, then it's just our middle schools that are in 3rd tier who would be pushing out that 2 miles, and we would still be able to accommodate our students in 1st and 2nd tier at 1 mile and over for the bus. There would be no change in those. It would just be those 3rd tier right now that we can work on bringing back in as we hire more employees. Our recruiting is out there. I've spoken with AAPT and TAA. They've got stuff on their social media page. Shelley and I briefly discussed the Buckeye Career Development page. K-12 Job Spot is one that's big out there also. And then just pushing it, my guys are pushing it through their social media sites also to get it going. So this was very tough to put together and bring to Megan, first of all, because it's not what I like having to say is that I can't do this when you ask my department to do something. And what I've got to do is best for us to be successful and be safe and to provide the service to the students that we can. And right now, it will be the 2 miles for the short term, hopefully the shortest term possible. Any questions?
Yeah, Tommy, can you just repeat what you said about tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3?
Yes.
At the 1 and 2 mile, where you think we're actually going to start and how that's going to progress?
So what Susan and I have done right now is we have built the routes for everything at 2 miles. Everything is at 2 miles. For example, our first 2 schools, Barbara, Maple, Paget, Litchfield, all those that start at 7:25 time. We had 21 routes that needed to be done to cover all of those. By doing the 2 miles, I've gotten it down to about 10. Second tier is all our schools that start between 7:50 and 8:05 or 8:15. We needed 23 routes to do all of those. I've gotten that down to about 14. Our third tier, which is our 4 big middle schools, Iowa Tech, Wigwam Creek, and Western Sky, we needed 30 routes to do all of those. I've gotten that down right now to about 25, and I'm looking that I may be able to drop that to 23. If I can, then first and second tier, those 21 routes and 23, I can still do those because I would have enough employees to do that. And so those would not be affected with the walkback. Does that make sense?
Yes, so I just want to make sure this is clear. So the youngest students, so K through 5, even if we change this policy, you don't see those actual walk boundaries needing to change for K through 5.
You're absolutely correct. The way that our numbers are working out right now, and that's including the middle school parents that have requested the transportation registry for it, we would still accommodate those, and we would be able to do all our normal first and second values.
Okay, because I believe safety was one of the things that I know I was concerned
Correct.
about, and so in knowing that K through 5 is still going to be covered, because again, even if we change this, you're still going to transport as many as you can between that 1 to 2 mile radius,
Absolutely.
and you will escalate that as we get more employees.
Absolutely, absolutely. And where we sit right now, I need at least 23 to do all of that. And when I look at our drivers that we're short right now, and the ones that are on leave of absence, I've heard from a few that are gonna come back, and they're just waiting for it. I'm very excited for them to be back, because I miss seeing them around the office where I was going right now for Safe Place. We're getting closer to that, and even if I have to have 2 of my office staff covering right now, we can do that. And that's the safety issue, is if I can provide K-5 the way we've always been doing it, I will be ecstatic, and then work on getting those middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade back in as quick as possible. And while accommodating right now as many of them as we can, absolutely.
Okay, and the difference there is just, in the 3rd tier, we're covering more distance and more students, and they're all in the 1 tier rather than the 2 other tiers.
Correct, so like L. Thomas Head covers the Barbara Roby area and the Dreaming Summit area. So we're covering these 2 huge areas for the 1 school, where Roby is a smaller area.
Okay.
Same thing with Creek, and Rancho, and Corte, and Palm Valley, where Palm Valley is just Palm Valley. So that we have a larger distance to go for those 3 tiers. Yes.
I do not envy you having to come up here to us about this, because none of us want, I don't think any of us want to do this, and I asked before, and I'm gonna ask again, what are our other options? Because I know that we're hearing that you might be able to handle K through 5, but I have a high schooler last year, 2 years ago, they got hit by a truck while riding his bike to school. And that definitely impacts my thinking. We cannot sit up here and not recognize that we had a student that died last year walking home from school. So I think that we cannot forget that these kids, middle schoolers or elementary school kids walking, are going to be walking very large distances across very unsafe roads. My whole community and kids that go to middle school have to cross Indian school, and I start to go to their middle school. So I don't know how this can be our only option.
I need at least 10 more drivers to do this. And the process is, in a normal situation, is a 4 to 6 week turnaround to get someone certified. I don't even have that time frame right now. Other districts are seeing the same issues with a driver shortage. Wendy and I talked about a 3rd-party company of buses to come out to do this, to charter them out. Most of them require at least a 1-year contract. And the largest one that is in our valley is no longer large, because they lost a contract for their large school, and they're down to about 12 buses in the valley, and 8 of them are used for charter schools, and the rest of their spares. I wish I had a better answer. I don't know what another option is. Some districts were even talking of no more general transportation whatsoever, because as a state, it's not something we have to provide. It is a cost to the district. The district decides we want to do this for our community and our students. I wish I had a better option. And I apologize that I don't.
I think what I would also add to that, Melissa, is just because we're not transporting, if we can't transport these kids in the middle school who live between 1 and 2 miles from the school, that doesn't mean they're all walking to school. Now, I don't know what percentage of those kids would be walking to school, but I think especially if we can present it as a temporary situation and ask the parents, you know, we need your help with this because we have a staffing shortage due to COVID and that sort of thing. I think that might be a way to get more community support for this.
I totally agree with what you're saying, but I think that the fact of the matter is that the kids who are not going to be able to be driven by their parents are the parents that have to go to work. And so our kids that are going to be in our Title I schools are going to be more likely probably to not have access to that school right from their parents, not be able to be picked up by their parents after school. And they're the ones that are going to be walking the long distances. Those parents are probably not the ones that are emailing us right now because they might not even know this is happening. And kids are gonna expect, we're gonna send stuff out saying that school's gonna open and they're gonna expect that bus and they're not gonna have a bus. So. I know we have to reach, I understand we have to figure something out. We've been rocking hard place, and I understand that. I just feel really strongly that we have to think about the fact that there are gonna be kids that are going to have to walk 2 miles. And that's a really long distance, especially given the fact that we're still having over 100-degree days right now, where our kids are walking home in this excessive heat days potentially. And is that safe for them?
I agree with the sentiment, right, that I think we can all agree this is not in the best interest of students. It's just not. I mean, it's less safe, right? It's not what we want. I think unfortunately our choices are, bad and worse, right? And we don't really have a lot of options. I think the hardest part of sitting up here, when I mentioned it before, right, you're analyzing these impossible scenarios, right? Where it's like you either have a terrible choice or a worse choice. I think it's the change, right? 2020 has just been so difficult for everyone. And so I think that's why this is, potentially more of an emotional hot button than it would be, because we have very little time to plan, right? I mean, you have been, I'm sure, crossing your fingers and toes and, praying to whatever God you pray to that someone's going to show up on your doorstep wanting to drive a bus, and hoping that over the summer, as you lose people, that more people are going to show up. And that's through no fault of your own or the district. It's just, this is the way that 2020 has left us, unfortunately. And so I think it's just adding so many more challenges, right, to the families that have already struggled with distance learning. And they're going to struggle through hybrid for the next couple of weeks. And they're, trying to get back to work or trying to get their kids to school. And I think that's what makes it even harder, because I think the most vulnerable students and families are the ones that are going to suffer this time. And I don't see a better scenario. I'm just trying to explain why it feels like such an emotional decision to us, and I'm sure to you, because this is one of those times where we can't just say, well, this is better for kids, so we're just going to take this option. I like the fact that you feel confident and that you're going to be able to cover our K-5 kiddos. In terms of safety, obviously, middle schoolers have, more ability to walk to school on their own, I think, than elementary schoolers in a typical setting. I think no matter what the vote is tonight, that I agree with your sort of review of the timeline, and that I'd like for us to come back together in December and say, okay, realistically, nothing can change before then, from what I'm hearing from you, only because we don't, just based on the state's timeline in terms of getting drivers. I would encourage you, certainly anyone in your office that is not essential to be there to cover, accidents or what have you, to have them driving the bus. But if December is really the first time we can even review what that would look like, I think we should absolutely do that and say, okay, how has it been going? Really try to monitor that on a monthly basis, see how it's been going, and see if there's any possibility we'd be able to make some adjustments, come December.
Great, and one thing, talking with the other directors and supervisors across the state, we've got a guy from Thatcher that's on Tucson flags out there all over in our weekly meetings on Zoom. We're all seeing and expecting the same thing, especially those who've already started. Their ridership this year is down by 60% from the year before, and it wasn't even a change in, well, we want you to register. They went and just did everything normal, and they're seeing a lower ridership number. And if we get to see that, I'm going to be able to accommodate this a lot more, less than 2 miles from the 1 mile out that we normally do in a regular school year. The issue is, I don't know who's going to ride yet. And in our district, what we do is, if they're eligible for a bus, we assign them a bus for that just in case.
So I wanted to clarify, Daniel was talking about revisiting. You're going to do this rolling, right? So like if it turns out you're able, some magically you have 2 already qualified bus drivers that come in, you're not waiting for us to say, yeah, we should have more, right? You're just
adding more
anything you can add, you're adding everything you can when you can immediately, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify, because it sounds like.
No, absolutely, because in Arizona, we're funding We're technically not funding for students under a mile, we're funding for those that are over a mile. So anyone that I can get on a bus that's more than 1.00 miles, I'm gonna put on a bus because I can account for more 100-day report also. If I get 3 drivers from another district, go, yeah, I want to come join Litchfield, they're doing great things, and they're certified, it's a 3-day turnaround for me, yes, to just flip it in the computer. I do a road test, we put them on a route and create more data out there from what we're doing. See, I'm not gonna be coming back going, can I add one? I'm going to add one.
Okay, that's what I thought, I just wanted to clarify.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're expecting more ridership. Like I said, we never know. For example, I've got a route at Litchfield. Every year, there's like 140 assigned to the route, 35 show up. There's 140 eligible to get on this one, 35 show up. I've been here, this is my 20th year with Litchfield. I don't think we've ever seen more than 50 students on this one route. The route hasn't changed in the 20 years I've been here. You know, I've got one in another school in an area that if it says 82 are assigned, we're gonna have 79 show up for that route. And having someone in our department, having actually a lot of them in our department that know our area so well, we can look at the neighborhoods and go, okay, this is what we're gonna get out of this. This is our normal. This year maybe a little less because there's still anxiety from parents. You know, they want them in hybrid, 2 days a week, 3 days online, but they're still not ready for that school bus yet. I understand that. There may be some that 5 days they gotta be in class in a more controlled area. They're not ready for that school bus yet, and I understand that. As the year goes on, we may get more to add on to the bus, but it may be we're the first day of school and I'm planning for 1,800 students and only 500 show up. And after 2 weeks, we see that 500, I can start adding more in and getting back to that 1 mile over. That's the whole goal, is as soon as I can start adding these in, I'm going to start adding these in, absolutely.
Okay, I would like to say just a comment before we move to voting. I think in part of our district communication, as I know we're gonna have a lot right over the next couple of weeks, I would ask that we include the not so subtle request for parents to transport their own children, even if they are 1 to 2 miles or 2 miles and above. And you know, and I will say this, I realize that it's an inconvenience to transport your child every morning and every afternoon. I completely understand that, and typically we have extremely reliable transportation and, you know, great experiences on the bus. My kids have rode the bus, they, you know, really enjoy it, but you know, I would beg parents to please, if you have the capability of transporting your child or doing a carpool or working in that scenario, please do, because I think it will help us protect our most vulnerable students that do not have that option and will be mind walking 2 miles in 100-degree heat across Dysart or whatever it may be. So I would encourage us to just to communicate that out as much as we possibly can. We're not required to do this, but we all feel an obligation to do it, and I know you do.
And Susan and I are working our hardest for those that have to cross like Dysart Road to not have that happen. Because, you know, when you look for El Thomas Tech, there's really only one place across Dysart, and that's at Bethany, and you don't want 400 kids from Dream Summit walking across Bethany at the same time. It's those kinds of things that we're looking at. Where else can we do to accommodate this? We're doing our best with it. This is not ideal at all. And, you know, we can also work with some of our local law enforcement agencies, you know, that patrol the cities and municipalities where our schools are, and say, hey, we're gonna need some extra help with some monitoring around here because there is gonna be a lot more parent traffic. And that was something I mentioned to Megan as well when we were discussing it. You know, and some of the principals agreed, like, we need to reach out to the division and say, hey, we need some more over here between this time and this time. And that's another avenue that we can go as well.
I love that idea. Great community partnership opportunities and keep parents driving the speed limit in our school zones. And I mean, let's face it, that happens all the time. And also protecting those kiddos that do have to, you know, cross streets and walk into those, you know, further neighborhoods. So that's fantastic. And I commend you for standing up here. You knew you were going to give me that over this. I know you did. And I hope that we were as kind as we could be. And you knew, I mean, this is emotional for you too. I know.
Absolutely legitimate questions. I was expecting every single one of them. The safety piece is the hardest piece for me.
Yeah.
Is the hardest piece for me to get over with this. Is that I'm going to be asking parents to allow their kids to walk up to 2 miles to get to school. I don't like it. It's one reason why we're not high school, with a 1.5 mile boundary. I like our run. So, yeah.
But we're also, and I will speak for all of us, because I think that we are confident that you're going to do everything, even on a daily basis, if things change, that you're going to make those accommodations and try and work with families that are in very vulnerable situations that, really need help, as you always do. So thank you for taking the meeting. We do really appreciate it. And for being so prepared and giving us, all the information. I wish it was different. Obviously, we all do, but I think you have a very good handle on what you need and where you can make slight modifications to enhance that service every one additional driver you get back. So I'm confident that it's going to get better every single person you add. So
Yeah, and Susan, like I said earlier, she's working on hybrid route sets and then a regular school year route set. So we've got our hybrid, and when we figured out when we're working through this and we get more, we can go over here and look, okay, this is the area that needs it, let's pull this route back over into it. So she's already got it mapped out the way it needs to be done, and because she is amazing, and without her, I would be lost in those days, so.
thank goodness for awesome staff. So
I just want can I continue? Like, I want you to know I appreciate you, and I know this is hard. I know that I have the most questions, so I appreciate you, and it is nothing personal because I know you don't want to do this. So.
Yeah, this is, one of those unfortunate votes. So, I will entertain, I will make a motion. I will, to approve the change to walk boundary and for the 2021 school year, with the caveat as discussed that we will revisit in December of 2020.
Danielle, we gotta do this. We gotta do the next one first. Is that right, Amy? Do we have to do L first?
What?
Do we have to do L first?
No.
Well, it's separate. We approved the change to the boundary and
This
then we
is
approved
the
the
change
change to
in
the
policy.
Okay.
Okay, so, yeah, I'll start over because I think we're gonna change the boundary here and then we'll go to the policy next. So I move to approve the change to the walk boundary for this year, with the caveat that the board will revisit at the December 2020 meeting.
I will second.
Any other final comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
Nay. Okay, one nay. Okay, motion carries. We are not quite halfway done, but I think we might just need a break to use the restroom or to stand up and walk around a little bit. We've been here for 3 hours. So if I could just make a motion for a quick 2 or 3 minute break, and then we'll come right back at it. I move that we take a 2 minute break. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Fantastic. 2 minute break. We'll be right back.
I know.
My brain is already. Yeah, I just want to make sure that I can. Are we ready to go? Okay. Our agenda has been a little all over the place tonight. I realize it is after 9 p.m. and we are working very hard to get through a lot of important issues. We are going to kind of rearrange our agenda again based on a need and a timely topic that we need to do. But first, I will apologize that I was supposed to read a letter, and I had it in my notes, and I had everything here, and then I got to talking, and I got distracted. So I want to get back to it because this is very important. We are missing one of our board members this evening, Elaine Weathersby. She is taking her daughter to college, finally, after a lot of waiting to see if that was going to happen. And she asked me to read this letter during our the board report or the reopening, because that's when we were having the most open discussion. And I did not do that, and I apologize. So Elaine, if you're able to be watching this tonight, I'm reading it now, my apologies. And to everyone else, I'll give you a little explanation of what Elaine has been up to and why she's not able to join us this evening. So, to my fellow board members, Superintendent Deming, LES staff, parents, and students. First, I would like to apologize for not being able to attend today's meeting, especially when there's so much to discuss. While I am disappointed in my absence, I am also excited to be traveling with my daughter for the beginning of her college experience as a member of Southwest Oregon swim team. The hot topic, obviously, is the reopening of our schools. I would like it to be clearly stated that the board continues to receive emails showcasing the division of our community. We have emails from parents begging that we stay closed, emails from parents begging that we reopen, and if that were not enough, I also have received an email threatening the board, which I find absolutely ridiculous. I have no doubt that the members of this board have the best intentions at heart, with the safety of our students at the forefront of all decisions. I truly believe in the life philosophy to keep moving forward. With this in mind, I would like to see our schools open as soon as possible with the five full day model, which is why I would be voting yes on a reopening plan if I were there this evening. I have no doubt my opinion will be met with happiness and disappointment. I personally have friends on staff that genuinely fear for their safety, as well as friends who are hoping to return to their classroom as soon as possible. The same can be said of our parents and our students. I realize this may be difficult for some, and I implore any staff member who is uncomfortable with the return to please contact Human Resources for accommodations. The numbers are clearly going in the right direction, and I have faith in the plan our superintendent and her staff have been working on, albeit I would prefer the five-day start as mentioned above. To all the teachers, classified staff, and administrators, I would like to thank you again for all of your hard work and dedication. I continue to be humbled by the love you have for the job that you do. And to the gentleman who thinks that threatening the board by doing whatever is within his power to remove each and every one of us if we don't resume classes right away, I have two words for you: bring it. Know your opinion, nor your status has anything to do with my decision to reopen. And while this open forum may not be the appropriate place to air my ill content, it does showcase the difficulty of community service at this time and at this level, of which I never expected would be so aggressively attacked. Again, my apologies for not being there in person, and a special thank you to our board president, Danielle Clymer, for being my voice this evening. Respectfully, governing board member Elaine Weathersby. Thank you, Elaine, for your comments as always. We wish you the best of luck in dropping off your daughter. This is a huge milestone for you as well as for her. So we missed you this evening, but thank you very much for your comments. We're going to rework the agenda as I suggested. We're going to move item 14H next in line, and that is the approval of purchase of network equipment through the 1 GPA cooperative contract. So we're going to have Superintendent Gunning present that to us, and then we will go back to the 14L and update the policy that we just discussed.
President Clymer, members of the governing board, we would recommend the approval of the use of 1 GPA cooperative contract for the purchase of network equipment for the amount not to exceed $150,000 for the 2020-21 school year. The purchasing department requested pricing and availability from multiple vendors using a cooperative contract and has determined that high-tech network and security solutions provided the district the best value and most competitive pricing. This will help us in improving our whole network and helping with our internet capacity.
Okay, I will open the floor for questions or comments.
I don't have any questions. I will just reiterate, knowing something about networking and computer systems through osmosis from my husband, that I do think this is long overdue. I would agree that we have not invested money into our technology infrastructure. And though this is the distance learning format is kind of forcing our hand in that, I think it is an investment that will pay off in years to come as well.
Melissa, did you have a question?
No, I just agree with everything Kim said.
Okay,
especially
you just looked like you were gonna leave
Especially
that.
through osmosis because of my husband.
Okay, it looks like you were gonna approach that microphone, so let's wait for Tanya, do you have any comments?
No, glad that we're doing it.
Okay, well, I will be the only one then with questions. I too am glad that we are doing this. One is a question and two is a comment / concern. One is what budget, what money is this being pulled from, $150,000?
Wendy, do you want to chime in on that one? I think it's probably.
Is this
the
our
education-
stabilization grant?
Stabilization grant.
And my kind of question concern is, I think Kim, you just would have pinpointed it exactly. And probably not just in this area of technology, but overall, we're finding ourselves being very reactive and not proactive. And I feel like while this money is probably very well spent, and I know nothing about networking, so, I mean, I do understand that we need the technology and the strain that our distance learning is having on us right now. I do understand that, but I think at least as described to the board or to the public, there's a lack of an overall strategy. And I think us just continuing to independently fund these things that we're in dire need of, moving forward, I would love to see sort of what is our overall strategy? What are we trying to do, right? I mean, we don't necessarily have all the money in the world to do that, but we've continually are just spending. Tonight we spent over $1 million that we don't really have on things that we absolutely need. So we're purchasing good things. This is a good thing to purchase, and I have no problem doing that. I think it's just asking the bigger question of what is our long-term plan? What's our game plan here, and how do we switch from that being reactive to being proactive and saying, okay, here's our 5-year plan. We know we're going to have to do this. Funding is always an issue, so we don't even have to talk about that. But I mean, what do we really need, and where are we moving? We've had to purchase so much more technology this year than we ever anticipated. How are we going to utilize that moving forward? Because we're now accelerating whatever strategy we did have into that. You know, whether it's a one-to-one for our students or, you know, getting a little further along that path. So I would just encourage, you know, further presentation of an overall strategy of what money we anticipate spending over the next couple of years, because I think we're only going to see this technology needs grow, unfortunately, as we expand. And now that we've gone digital, I don't expect we're going to go backwards with that. So anyway, any other?
I would just add that I think the perfect timing for that, because right now we kind of are in just putting out fires mode, would be in the spring when we potentially start talking about a bond, because we can use bond monies to help strengthen what we have, help with our long-term strategy. So I think that would be good timing to actually have something more formal presented for our technology plan.
Agreed. I think that's great, Mike. Okay, if there's no other comments, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the purchase of network equipment through the cooperative contract as presented.
I second.
Any other questions or comments? Nope. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, now we are back to item 14L. Under the authority of the Governing Board Policy BGF, the board may consider suspending Governing Board Policy BGB as it pertains to a first and second reading of adjustments to policy for the purpose of addressing item 14M and 14N on this agenda. Wendy Qualls is going to present to us. Well, actually, okay, I'm sorry. Are you just presenting the sexual harassment, so we just need to approve this first, and then you'll present the sexual harassment?
Yes, you pretty much summed up the first request.
Okay, perfect. I saw that, I was like, okay, I don't need to present to you that we're suspending the policy. Okay, so I will go ahead and move that we approve the suspension of the policy as it pertains to item M and N on this agenda, first reading.
I second.
All those in favor?
Wait, can I ask a question first?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so we're suspending this policy only because the thing that we're going to review that we need to approve tonight, we don't have time to do 2 readings. So we're suspending this because it is essential to some funding that we're getting to approve this as soon as possible.
We just need procedures in place, for the first one, for the sexual harassment. We need to get those processes going, training and processes going. And then also the one for transportation boundaries. So it's just.
Okay, and the timing that this needs to be done in 1 reading instead of 2 was based on a recommendation from ASBA. Okay. That's all I'm going to clarify.
So there are 2 policies in our.
Wait, hold on, we didn't vote. I'm sorry, I just made the motion and she commented, just 1 second. Okay, any other further comments? Okay, we've had a motion and it's been seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, now we are on to 14N, Wendy, the approval of the sexual harassment policy revisions and the new policy ACAA.
So in August of 2020, the U.S. Department of Education has new regulations related to sexual harassment in the education setting. So they have created policies for us, the ASBA has. We need to appoint a Title IX, or Title IX officer. That's going to be Monica Sanders. And then we need training for our staff on how to report any allegations of sexual harassment. And then also train employees on discipline related to this. So this is the first policy that we're presenting to you for a first and final read. That is the new policy. The second policy is ACA, which is sexual harassment regarding employees. And that policy is being revised just to clarify that there is a difference in the definition for sexual harassment under the ACA policy versus the new ACA policy.
So we have 2 policies on sexual harassment and they define it in 2 different ways?
Yes. So the one related to employees is defined differently than those in the education.
Meaning students? Okay, so ACA is for staff and employees and ACAA is for students. Okay. Okay, I will open the floor for questions or comments. This will be the only time, right? Because once this is approved, this is policy. So if you have questions, now is the time. No questions? Okay. Can you quickly recap the difference between ACA and ACAA? Why would we treat students different than teachers? It might be obvious, but I'm just wondering.
So the ACA the ACA for employees falls under the EEOC guidelines, where the new ACAA is under Title IX.
Okay.
So it's just the definition related to the body governing those groups of people.
Okay, got it. Great definition. Okay. Okay. There are no questions. I will entertain a motion.
I motion to approve ACA sexual harassment policy revisions and adopt new policy ACAA Title IX sexual harassment with 1 read relevant.
I second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to 14N, approve revisions to policy EEAA, walkers and riders. Superintendent Report.
Madam President, members of the governing board, we would like to have you approve EEAA, modifying it from the 1 mile to 2 miles in the radius of school.
Can you do it? So, yes and no. We approved the change to the boundary. Now we have to approve the revision to the actual policy. So
we would bring this back to the board as soon as we're able to.
Correct. We will revisit in December and then change the policy in whatever time period, spring, that might be. So we will have to go through the policy change process again, whenever we're able to update it back to the plan. Okay, any questions about that? Just policy wording in our policy manual, updating the 1 mile to 2 mile that was previously approved in 14K. Okay. I motion to approve revisions to policy EEAA, walkers and riders as submitted. I second. Any comments or questions? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nay. Okay, 1 nay, 3 yeas, that motion carries. Okay. Yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Okay, 14O, the governing board will reinstate governing board policy BGB, which would go back to second reads of all of our policy. I'll entertain a motion.
I motion to have the governing board reinstate or governing board policy BGB.
Okay. Second. Thank you, Tanya. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Next, we are on to 14P, approval of appointed district delegates for the Arizona School Board Association. This is me. Well, I'm looking because in P and Q, so let me start by just saying that the ASBA has decided that as a board, we will elect our delegates for different, we will have one for delegate assembly, we will have one for their policy discussions, and one for the political agenda. Okay, so we have already elected Melissa as our representative for the delegate assembly, which is coming up in actually just a couple of weeks. So I would like to present, or at least request, that you consider possibly doing this on an annual basis. So having one person that would serve as the delegate for this board for 2020 that would do our delegate assembly, they would do the policy, whatever changes, and then would also do the political agenda. This year, that would be Melissa, so we would nominate Melissa, she would cover that. But then next year, we would add to this, instead of doing all three, we as a board just decide we're gonna have one person that represents us for ASBA that year, they go do it, and then we just rotate that responsibility. That would be my suggestion to try and keep it. Now, I believe we can have an alternate delegate. So if for some reason, come December, when we're doing political agenda or whatever that time frame is, and Melissa's unavailable, then we would just elect an alternate delegate and we would go from there. Any comments or questions? Yeah, I think it makes it easier, one person for the year, and then we just rotate that responsibility.
That's what it was, because last year Elaine was our person, and I filled in for her in December because she couldn't make it to the
annual conference, but she did the things at the law conference.
This is new, so they've updated, I don't know if they're trying to give people more opportunities, board members to be involved in different places, which I'm not opposed to, but I just think if we can have one person that sort of knows the ASB process and does that delegate for the year, and then we'll rotate that responsibility, it seems to make more sense than trying to, alternate 3 people every year.
Bigger boards maybe that would be
Beneficial.
more beneficial, but like for us, as small as we are, I mean, it doesn't have to waste the time to piecemeal it out. And like you said, you've got someone who's kind of got it dialed in for the year.
Melissa, would you be comfortable with that?
Yes. I thought that's what I committed to anyways.
Okay, yes, you are, we overcommitted you, we didn't even have to do this thing, we did. Okay, so we need to go through the motions here. So I will, motion that we approve, Melissa as our appointed district delegate for the Arizona School Board Association. This is 14P. I was second, okay. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We're going to do this all over again. So item 14Q, the Arizona School Board Association draft 2021 political agenda. And direct the district's delegate to the ASBA delegate assembly to represent the board's determined position. Again, Melissa, this is already a position that you were filling anyway, so I will nominate Melissa and move to approve 14Q as presented with Melissa as our board delegate.
I second.
Everyone understands that we're electing Melissa to all 3 of these positions to the end of 2020. We will revisit this next year when someone else can be elected. Perfect. There's been a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Fantastic. I feel like that was a tongue twister at the end, very long meeting, trying to get that done. Okay. 14R. I'm not even sure the agenda R before. Let's just say that, because it feels very far into the alphabet at this point in the evening. Approval of governing board goal number 3, minimum requirements for board presentation. And that will be from Superintendent Benning.
Madam President, members of the governing board, I took the suggestions that you had from the last meeting, I took them back to obtain feedback, kind of consolidated the information into a flow that I thought would be easy for the public to understand and also for our staff, and kind of like an automatic flow of the information. So just wanted to present for recommendations and or approval. I do anticipate that, I do feel like this will be a work in progress as well, as after we even approve it and we're working, we'll need your feedback as we go along to see if it's really meeting the needs that you were expecting. So also my thought is that this would, so we have our PowerPoint, our consistent PowerPoint now. So we'll have the PowerPoint format that will be blank for if it's just a standard presentation, possibly something like budget or something along those lines. Then Shelley will add in these components for something that will be new for a presentation. So that will be embedded within a PowerPoint. So it makes it easy for whoever's presented, as well as then we can add this information for like either an attachment, kind of like there was a sample, not that it contains the same information, but like a sample form that could attach to the memo or be embedded within the memo when somebody submits something that's not a presentation format.
Okay, just for a quick recap, which I should have done, I apologize, before Jody started. So our governing board goal number 3 for this year was to create a minimum set of requirements for the district staff when they come to the board, whether it's at meetings or study sessions or in between in communication, where we might be, or not might be, we would be voting on an item. This was done, I think, for two reasons. One, because as board members, we review all of this information typically over a weekend before our meetings, so we don't really have staff communication back and forth so much. And so if we had all of the information up front, we would, be more informed by the time the meeting came around. And secondly, I think it prepared the staff for the items we already knew we'd be asking, so they can gear the presentation towards the items that are most important to us and most important to our decision-making process, and so that they're not wasting their time or their energy in creating presentations about things that won't ultimately lead to us making that decision. So hopefully this creates some efficiency. I know, Jody, to your point, we may and probably should revisit it maybe December or January after we had a couple of months of doing it. And is this actually helpful? Are we creating the efficiency that we were hoping for? And is the board happy with how the requirements are sort of coming into play? So I would suggest that we set that potentially on a December agenda just to make sure that we're reconnecting. There were 3 items that were on the original list of requirements that weren't on this, and I just wanted to discuss if there's still, things that the board requests or not, and how we feel about that, and if not, we could just approve it as is. Let's see, the first was it committee use, and if so, what were their findings, and did you involve internal or external stakeholders, and if so, how did you do this? That was one. The second was, does this directly impact our students? Yes or no? If yes, is it equitable? And number 3 is, have we done this in the past? And then if yes, what was the decision made at that time? So we had a very long list at our last one. So at our last meeting and when we sent those back to Jody. So I just wanted to discuss, those were left off, were they purposely left off or not, or some of them are kind of worked into other requirements. So I just want to make sure that we kind of just went back and looked at those, because a lot of these were condensed in a more efficient way than we had originally presented them in terms of the list.
So in looking at whether there was a committee or participation or additional information, that's kind of where I felt like that was that stakeholder process. That would be additional information that would be helpful for the board. Was there a committee, maybe a few insights or details about the committee, and or if there was any outside stakeholders linked to any current initiatives, pros and cons that we might have found during that process, especially the committee and stakeholder participation. The impact on the students, we put that under who is impacted so that you would know directly. Was there a major focus as it staff and students, or is it mainly students and the total number that would be impacted by that? I didn't see the other.
Can you go back just before we go? The first one was a committee use, and so were their findings. You just listed something, but I don't see that here on the request requirements. Read that one more time as to where
supporting details. So examples would be committee participation, pros and cons, linked to current initiatives, and any additional information to support at the very bottom for supporting details.
In the Word document.
Okay, yeah, no, I see that now. My concern is that there's just it's just not a direct question, so they can choose to add it or not choose to add it. So I misunderstood what you were saying. I apologize. The third item you said.
Then there was one other item, the last item that you said. You mentioned,
have we done this in the past, and if so, what was our decision at that time?
Yeah, I didn't have it on my original, or the document that I ended up with, so I didn't add that. So I don't know if that's.
What is any comments or discussion on those 3 things, whether they're used or should they be added, or this one, how we done in the past, then you get it back?
So as I think I reiterated, because I am a reiterator many times in the board retreat, it is very important to me that every single decision we make is balanced up against, is this what is best for student success? So I personally would like to see that in there, but if the rest of you don't feel that as important as I do, which is totally fine by me, overriding, that's totally fine. For me, I will always be doing that, and I think that would be important, whether it's only impacting teachers, whether we think it's only impacting teachers or not, everything's impacting students. So
feel really strongly that every decision we make, we need to be able to say yes on that. Or if we say no, like tonight with boundaries, that we discuss it, that we openly discuss, this is not what's best for students, but this is what we have to do and this is why. And we're going to revert to what's best for students as soon as we possibly can.
Agreed.
I can agree with that.
So would that be, in my thought, is that under the purpose of the request? Would it be, or who is impacted and how is it benefiting students, or?
But I want the specific question on there. I want it to say, is this recommendation what is best for student success? And I want the presenter to be able to say yes or no. It's a simple question, like yes or no. And just like I think tonight, Tommy would have said, no, but this is why. This is the explanation that we have. And I think if the answer is no, that requires the presenter to rethink and try to come up with additional solutions before it ever makes it to us. That's why I think that's important. So then just to clarify, we received 3 documents. The Word document that has the basic information that we'd like to see. We received a sample template, but that sample template is not what we're using, correct? That was just a sample of what this could look like. You're going to convert this Word document into something that mimics more of the new PowerPoint presentation look and feel that we have.
Right, and creating like a form so that they can't, the form stays the same, you know, and then they just.
They're just inputting their own details, right, or specifics, okay.
And I think that student achievement question, honestly, you can just leave it back. I mean, that's just really where thinking should start, right? And again, there are exceptions to that rule, right? We're Tommy tonight, you know, that's but as a rule, it's a good question to ask yourself when you're presenting something.
Yeah, sure, absolutely, I agree. I do think, again, I think it's gonna take us a little bit to get our stride because it's gonna, take a little while for the staff to understand the template and all of that kind of stuff. But my hope is that it will be a little more efficient and, our meetings aren't getting any shorter, obviously. And I think, although I will say I'm very proud of us this evening. We've been very focused and very determined to get through this stuff. I've not gone off on a tangent yet, so I appreciate that. But I would like to see that. So I will, I will go ahead and say, I will move to approve the minimum requirements for governing board presentation with the addition of what is best for students question with a agenda item in December to revisit to make sure that we're actually achieving that goal. That was not the motion. Okay, so any other questions about that? So we will see this again in December, and we'll see this, we'll start October 1st. So anything we see, we move forward, but again, it'll be a little bit flexible until December. Okay, perfect. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Oh, Melissa.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, I was just. Okay. Okay, now all we have left on our agenda is item, I say all we have left, it's almost 14C, D, and E, which is the Career Development and Performance Compensation Plan, fiscal year 2021 Consolidated 301 Plan, and the 2021 Performance Award Plan revised. Due to the time and the importance of these things and that, need our clear head, I would like to table these items for our next meeting. I know that we do have a meeting on, one second, pull up my calendar, the 22nd. That agenda is pretty packed as well. So First, let me do this. I will move to table these 3 items until our next meeting. If I can have a second. Second, perfect. Melissa, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay, now what we need to do is set that next meeting timeframe. Again, the 22nd study session agenda is long, and I know these are somewhat deadline driven, so I don't want to create a barrier for that. So our options are limited at best to next week and or potentially this Thursday. For a reschedule, an additional meeting to discuss these items, and then we'll come back on the 22nd for our study session.
I am flexible. I would defer to Jody what her preference is based on her schedule.
That's our network, Jody. If only we just approve it and just updates right quick. Right?
So like, is that,
Do we know their name?
she goes back on the 14th, because her and I are thinking about both the 15th, but we can. 14th.
So from the 15th on, should we?
Yeah, she goes back.
Okay.
She's available on the 15th because we're supposed to meet that night. To talk about our work thing, so.
Oh, okay.
Your goal.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we could do the 15th.
Okay.
I don't know.
What time? I could do the 15th, but it would have to be, like normal, later-ish.
Yeah. Well, we just do it at 6
earlier. Either one.
When you say earlier, what does that mean?
To me, earlier is like 4. That's like, it's early.
Oh, yeah, 4 is pretty early. Okay, 15th at like 6 p.m., right? Or the 16th earlier. Those are kind of our options right now. Does that work for you?
We're open either, but Gina, I believe you were presenting, so I don't know what your schedule is for next week.
15th.
Say that again. As long as I'm done before.
All right, 15th.
15th at 6.
15th at 6 p.m. Okay, we will make sure that we connect with Elaine. Okay.
And we do this here, or where are we?
I think we'll probably do it here.
Do it here again. Okay, here at the Litchfield cafeteria. Okay, thank you very much for the flexibility in the schedule. I know for those of you watching, we jumped around on the agenda tonight, but it was really important for us to get to all of our reopening, cleaning, networking, all of those things first, because those are the most important. And the performance pay and the 301, I know we've had an entire career development committee, we've had teachers and staff working on this, and I know that it is a very important piece of their salary and bonus structure. So I want to make sure that we give it complete and clear thought and not starting at 10 p.m. So thank you for rescheduling, and we will do that again on Tuesday, September 15th at 6 p.m. And with that, I believe we are wrapped up.
I motion to adjourn.
Second, great. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
That was a lot of stuff.
And it's not even 10.
It's so excited for them.
You're excited for them.
I don't like it. Like,